Please stand by for air. The meeting is about to start. Please stand by. We're going on air in 5, 4, 3.
Are we good? Because it didn't count down. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Sorry we started a little bit late. Welcome to the September 8th, 2023 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. We have 5 members here. We have 1 that is going to be remote, but will have voting ability, and we still have 1 opening that will hopefully be filled by next month's meeting. Mr. Belush, would you please take attendance for the record, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have all 6 members present today. This includes 5 members in chambers. Those 5 members present in chambers here are Mr. Dan Nagler, James Silvers, Jeffrey Aronson, Andres Asion, Michael Goldberg. Joy Malikoff will be attending via Zoom and voting via Zoom.
Thank you, Mr. Belush. Mr. City Attorney, if you can give information on how the public can participate via Zoom and swear in the people that are here personally to testify, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. Good morning, all. Today's meeting of the Board of Adjustment has been scheduled in a hybrid format with a quorum of the board physically present here in the temporary commission chambers at 1901 Convention Center Drive, and member Malikoff will be attending virtually, as well as any applicant, staff, and members of the public. You also have a choice of appearing in person or virtually via the Zoom platform. For those wishing to participate via the Zoom platform webinar, may dial 888-853-5257, which is a toll-free number, and enter the webinar ID, which is 828-6961-5309, or log into the Zoom app and enter the webinar ID, which again is 828-6961-5309. Any individual wishing to speak on an item must click the raise hand icon if they are using the Zoom app, or dial *9 if they are participating by phone. Before I swear in those that will be testifying today, I'm going to read into the record and advise all of the city's notice regarding lobbyist registration. If you are appearing on behalf of a business, a corporation, or another person, you need to be registered as a lobbyist with the city clerk's office. If you haven't registered yet, you should register before you speak to the board. You do not have to register as a lobbyist if you are speaking only on your behalf and not any other party, or if you are testifying as an expert witness, providing only scientific, technical, or other specialized information or testimony in this public meeting, or if you are appearing as a representative of a neighborhood association without any compensation or reimbursement for your appearance to express support of or opposition to any item. Expert witnesses and representatives of neighborhood associations shall, prior to appearing, disclose in writing to the city clerk their name, address, and the principal on whose behalf they are communicating. If you are an architect, attorney, or employee representing an applicant or an objector, you must register as a lobbyist. These rules apply whether you are appearing in favor of or against an item, or encouraging or arguing against its passage, defeat, modification, or continuance. At this time, before we start the meeting, I'm going to administer the oath. So all those that will be testifying today, if you could please stand and raise your right hand. Okay, thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you'll be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you, and please be seated. And with that, Mr. Chair, we're ready to go.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Just for point of order, when we have public comment, I will be asking first individuals that are here in the chamber to speak, and then we'll take the anyone public on Zoom that would like to make a comment on it. Do we have any discussion items, Mr. Belush?
No, we do not.
Okay, next on the agenda, and we apologize for this not being included in the original package, approval of the Friday, July 7th, 2023 meeting minutes. Hopefully you had an opportunity to look over those minutes. If there's no changes, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Mr. Aronson, second by Mr. Silvers. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
So should we just, I want to make sure I get Ms. Malakoff for that vote. Was your vote for approval, Ms. Malakoff?
Yes, I voted aye. Can you hear me?
Yes, got you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Malakoff. Okay, we have a request for a continuance and withdrawal on ZBA 22-0143, 125 to 153 Collins Avenue, asking for a continuance to the October 13th meeting. Mr. Belush, would you like to give the reason for that continuance, please?
The applicant has requested the continuance, and all parties involved have agreed to that. Again, that's for ZBA 22-0143 for 125 to 153 Collins Avenue.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead and open the public comment, if there's any public comment. Closed.
Comment on the continuance?
It's protocol, we have to open up the public comment in case anyone has a comment or objects to it. Okay, note, with that being said, close public comment, vote by the board to approve.
Before the vote, I'd like to say something.
Okay, Mr. Aronson, turn your mic on. Put the mic down.
Sure. Now, my only comment is this. I have a conflict for the next meeting, an unavoidable conflict, and I'm not going to be able to be here. So just as a matter of record, if it's going to be continued until the next meeting, I just want to state that I'm not going to be here for that.
So, yeah, we appreciate that. Also, just as a point of information, so, we've been running short with an open position, so we've been running with 6, which makes it a little bit difficult if one person can't come. You've got 5 people, and approvals require a 5/7 vote. We do have a candidate for the open position that hopefully will be going to commission meeting next Tuesday. So for that October meeting, if everything goes well, we should have 6 out of the 7 with Mr. Aronson being absent. So just keep that in mind. Any other comments on that, Mr. Belush?
No comments. We just need a motion to continue to the October
Okay,
13th.
motion to approve the continuance? Motion by
So
Mr.
moved.
Silvers. Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nagler. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so we have another continuance, ZBA 23-0152, 2108 North Bay Road. In discussions with Mr. Belush, it was determined that a variance was not needed. Any additional comments on that, Mr. Belush, before I open it up for public comment?
No, we do have the applicant online with their hand raised, but just to verify what you said, it was determined after the application was submitted and advertised that a variance was not required. Mr. Amster, would you like to speak?
Open public comment?
Good morning.
Good morning,
Matt
Mr.
Amster.
Amster.
Law firm of Riverdale, Fernandez, Larkin, and Tapanes.
Yes, Mr. Amster, I just need you to raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I've already, spoken with Mr. Belush and completely understand, and we actually appreciate the interpretation that no variance is needed. I just wanted to ensure that our withdrawal is properly accomplished, and if there was any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Okay. Any questions, public comment? Okay, no questions. We'll go ahead and close the public comment.
And
All-
no action is required.
No votes required? Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Amster, for calling in. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a previously continued application, ZBA 23-0147, 625 West 42nd Street. There's 3 variances being requested. Mr. Belush, can you please tee that up and give the background on it?
Sure, thank you. And I will go through in quite a bit of detail on the application because the applicant is a homeowner. So again, this is ZBA 23-0147 for 625 West 42nd Street. An application has been filed requesting after-the-fact variances from the required rear yard setback, side yard setbacks, and from the maximum permitted lot coverage in required rear yard for the construction of 2 one-story additions to an existing single-story home. The subject site includes an existing single-story building that was originally constructed in 1937 on a corner lot. The existing home is well under the maximum thresholds for lot coverage and unit size and has a non-conforming rear setback. The finished floor elevation at 5.5-foot NGVD is also located well below the minimum required for new construction if there was a new home on the site, which would be plus 9 feet NGVD. The applicant is requesting the following after-the-fact variances. The first is a variance from the minimum required side yard setback of 7 foot 6 inches in order to retain a laundry room addition with an interior side yard setback of 3.1 feet and a bedroom addition with an interior side setback of 0.7 feet. The second variance is a variance from the required rear yard setback of 20 feet in order to retain a bedroom and bathroom addition with a rear setback of 2 feet. As noted in our report, notwithstanding the applicant's flood risk in constructing additions at the existing finished floor elevation of 5.5 feet NGVD, this lower elevation does mitigate the impact of the additions on neighboring properties. For comparison purposes, a fence or wall is allowed along an interior side yard at a height of 7 feet above future adjusted grade. In this case, as constructed, the roofs of these additions are located at an elevation of approximately 14 feet NGVD, which is below the height that would be allowed for a fence or wall on the property line within the rear side yard. For further comparison and to stress the comparatively low scale of the construction, a new single-story house could be built on the property with required 7.5-foot side setback and the level of the first floor placed at an elevation of plus 13 feet. A new home built to that level would have its first floor located just 1 feet below the roof of the subject additions, and then could go up to 24 feet in height above that point for a flat roof. We noted in our report the property to the north, which is the abutting interior side yard, is owned by a foundation that is run by the applicant and his family. This further reduces the immediate impact of the construction on the neighboring properties. The property to the east, abutting the rear yard, contains a 2-story accessory structure in the rear yard with a setback of approximately 5 feet. And the third variance is a variance from the requirement that at least 70% of the required rear yard should be sodded or landscape pervious open space, and they're providing a pervious open space of 63%. It should be noted that this home would be classified or could be classified as architecturally significant, and those homes that are classified as such are eligible for reduced setbacks as well as a reduction in the open space landscape requirements in the rear yard. This home would qualify for that designation and therefore meet the open space requirements in the rear yard. However, because of the setbacks that were constructed, the additions exceed the minimum required by the code, and the construction could not be approved administratively. Staff is supportive of the requested variances, and in order to further mitigate these variances, staff is recommending that as a condition of approval, that a full landscape plan be submitted for review and approval of staff as part of the building permit application. Staff is also recommending that the unpermitted driveway expansion on Prairie Avenue be removed or permitted in compliance with the required setback and open space requirements. Lastly, staff would note that if the requested variances are granted, the applicant must still satisfy all requirements of the applicable building and city codes for an after-the-fact building permit to be issued for the construction. Staff believes, based upon the foregoing, that the hardship and practical difficulty standards have been met, and staff is recommending approval of the variances as constructed. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Callis, who I believe would like to speak on the application.
Mr. Callis, thank you for coming. We'll give you 10 minutes. That's if you need more time, let me know. Thank you.
I want to just thank the board for the work, the community work that you do, because I'm involved in community work myself, and I appreciate you guys coming, taking time out of your day all the time doing these meetings. I see it's even, I would understand how difficult it is to, break a schedule and come in, so I do appreciate that. Yes, we would like you to pass this variance. We have sort of a hardship case. Our Bubby is living in that room right there. What's our Bubby here to my right, your left? She's 90 years old, and she's an Alzheimer's patient, and we have special access with the doors wide enough to get the wheelchair through, and various other things for her to survive in that room. So it would be very difficult for us if we'd have to destroy that room. Nothing's impossible, but it would be a hardship for us. And we appreciate any kind of understanding you have for that situation. if there are any questions that you have for me, I'm willing to answer.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Kalis. Let me go ahead and open it first to public comment. Anyone here in the chambers? Anybody on Zoom?
Yes, we have several people with their hand raised online.
Okay.
Take the first one, named Joel.
Joel, go ahead.
Good morning, Joel.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Wait, you
Yes.
got to get sworn in first.
Sure.
Okay.
Joel, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you'll be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please
Okay,
proceed, and I'll
uh,
set the clock for 2 minutes for you to address the board.
Okay, so just to give you a little reference, our backyards are kind of catty corner, so I'm on Post Avenue. I can speak to the character of the Kalises. You know, as Mr. Kalis said, he's, you know, serves the community. His wife had done that for many years as well. I know their kids. I know their sons-in-laws, and of course, you know, if you have good sons-in-laws, that's always a good thing. But as far as the, you know, Mr. Kalis was saying is they used the room for his grandmother, and you know, I didn't realize she was an Alzheimer's patient. I know that she's in a wheelchair, and you know, you don't really find that too often. I do a lot of work in the hospice, and you don't see family members committing to their family, to the elders like this. And so I think it speaks volume about characters for this family and what they do for the community and what they do for their own family. So I don't know if you could take that into consideration. And as far as a neighbor, you know, the room doesn't affect me at all. And so, you know, again, I think this is something that should be approved and make their lives, you know, and not uproot their lives, so to speak, and disrupt this woman, this lovely woman. So that was all I really had to say.
Thank you for calling in. Anyone else?
Yes, our next caller is Abigail.
Abigail, good morning.
Abigail, go ahead. You have 2 minutes. I'm sorry, you got to
I
swear
gotta
him in.
Swear in.
first.
Okay.
Hi, good morning. Please raise your right
Morning.
hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you'll be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I affirm.
Okay, and I'm going to set the clock at 2 minutes for you to address the board.
I also live in the neighborhood, living in Florida for a few years, and also could speak to the character of the Kalos family. They're wonderful people. They do a lot for the community. I know that they live with the grandmother who's very ill, and it's very helpful for her to be there. I know the daughter, the son-in-laws. Yeah, they're just very good people who add a lot to this community. And it would be really sad to see if they would have to, you know, move the grandmother anywhere, take her away from where she's comfortable. And also to take up their time, because most of their time is allotted to helping others. And I'm sure would be wasteful for them to be, you know, doing something like this instead of just continuing to do what they do.
Thank you for calling in.
The next speaker is Shmuley Shmatkin.
Yes.
Yes, good morning, sir. Before you address the board, I'll just need to swear you in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and I'll set the clock for 2 minutes for you to.
Thank you. I am the neighbor to the immediate east. I think my property borders the room in question. And I just want to say that I am not at all bothered or concerned about this, about the addition, and would be very happy to, in my small part, you know, by allowing this and take part in the Kalos family's hospitality and kindness, as you've heard from some of the other speakers. They are wonderful neighbors, couldn't ask for better. Hospitable, kind, have been there for me and my family when we've needed, and absolutely no objection, and I encourage you to allow this variance. That's all.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Gresham Fink. Or Gershon, sorry, Gershon Fink.
Good morning, Mr. Fink.
Good morning, can you hear me?
Yes, I'll just need to administer the oath before you address the board. Please raise your right hand.
Sure.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll set the clock for 2 minutes for you to address the board.
Okay, so first of all, good morning, and thank you very much. I have a lot of respect for everybody here on the board for what you do on behalf of the safety of our community. I would like to say, first of all, I've moved here 28 years ago. I know the Kalos family very well. They're the kind of people that help everybody. Doesn't matter who, what you are, where you're from. Anybody in our neighborhood knows that if they need something, they can go to the Kaloses and they'll help out. And that goes for everybody in the neighborhood. I will tell you that I happen to be a volunteer for the city as well, and I'm a CERT leader. I don't know if you're familiar with CERT, but it's training citizens in being prepared for emergencies. And I'm very familiar with the values. I mean, I think everybody here who's here today is very familiar with the values of the city of Miami Beach. Miami Beach is really concerned about the elderly when it comes for hurricane prep or it comes for different situations. There's always a lot of concern for the elderly, and there's concern for taking care of every single one of our citizens. And I believe that while I can definitely speak for the Kaloses because they're incredible people, this is not really about the Kaloses by themselves. This is actually about the values of our city. And while I do understand that there are rules and laws to be abided by, I also know that in life there are situations and exceptions, and within our value systems, I think that really the right thing is to accommodate this family that really utilizes all their resources in terms of time and energy to help, whether it's their mother or it's anybody else in this neighborhood. You can literally, I live on Post Avenue, you can walk around here and knock on every door. Everybody, doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, everybody knows the Kaloses, and they know that if they ever need anything, they can go to them. So they contribute to what we, how we feel about our cities. We all love Miami Beach. Miami Beach is very, very special to us. All my kids were born here. We try to contribute as much as we can to the city and to the neighborhood. And this family is like literally a core family that really takes care of every single human being, and they're just wonderful people. And I really urge the board that whatever you can do to accommodate them, you do, because like I said, this is like more about representing the strong values of our system, and sometimes finding within that how to accommodate special extending circumstances for people who are really extremely high value to our city. This is the kind of self-giving that we want everybody in our city, and we have so many people who do so much for the city citizens, and both in government level and in personal level.
Okay, if you can wrap up, I gave you an extra minute. If you could just wrap up, thank you.
Oh yeah, I'm done. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And like I said, thank you very much for everything you guys do.
Thank you for calling in.
And I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is Lawrence Faustine.
2 minutes. So I'm sorry, swear in first, Mr. City Attorney. Sorry.
Yes.
Yes,
Hello?
hi, good morning. Before you address the board, I just have to administer the oath. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, I'm going to set the clock for 2 minutes for you to address the board.
And I will just take 30 seconds because I think you've heard amazing testimony. And I just want to say that I really truly stand behind everything that was said about the Kalos family. I'm newer in the neighborhood, and I received so much kindness and support from them that I can only hope that you will consider all this testimony and really support their request, as we all do here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Doris.
Good morning, Doris.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hello, good morning.
Yes,
Hi.
before you address the board, I need to administer the oath. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and I'm going to set the clock for 2 minutes for you to address the board.
Okay, thank you. I live a few houses down to the Kalos family for over 15 years. They're amazing, how everybody mentioned, but I just want to mention something about Alzheimer patients. My husband's grandfather was an Alzheimer patient, and during a hurricane, I'm sorry, I might get emotional. During the hurricane, we had to move him, and when you move a patient from their home, it affects them greatly. And unfortunately, because of that, he passed away. So I just want you guys to take into consideration for the patient not to move them. It affects them greatly, and this room does not affect anybody. And I think for the patient, you know, she's very old. She hasn't bothered anyone. You know, Alzheimer patients sometimes leave the house. They don't remember, but she hasn't bothered anyone. The family's loving. The kids are loving. The grandkids are loving. The grandkids are always visiting the house. The house is love and warm. Sorry, I got a bit of emotional, but again, I agree with everybody else that to leave everything as is and to accept their request. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you.
With that, that is our last caller on Zoom.
Okay. With that being said.
I'm sorry, there is
No.
one more now.
We're good?
Mo?
Hi,
good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Wait.
Before you address the board, I'm going to be administering the oath. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and I'm going to set the clock for 2 minutes for you to address the board.
I mean, just hearing the testimony from the other people, there's not much more that one can say. I wanted to add something very simple, significant as it may be, that knowing the Kalos for so many years, their son-in-laws, their children, dealing with them on a regular basis, these are highly ethical people. They are an example of a good citizen that you want to have in your community. And they are people who try to do the best on a daily basis. Their whole surroundings, as you can see, people are determined by the way they're seen in the eyes of other people and first in the eyes of God. And I think they're being seen on both those accounts on a very high level. And we just ask you to do the same and, you know, allow them to have this variance passed. And it would be a great benefit to maintain this type of family in this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Are we good?
Okay, with that, that is our last caller.
Okay, with no other comment, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment. I'm going to go ahead and ask my board if there's any disclosures on this item. Should we go one at a time, or can we do
You do, just
any
anyone.
disclosures? I mean, we won't have to go
I
on.
only,
Yeah?
I know a couple of people who just spoke. I don't think that's a disclosure, but
No.
I'll just in the abundance of caution.
If that were the case, none of us would be up here, right?
Okay, all right, fair enough. Just playing it safe.
I don't know that it's a disclosure.
Put your mic on. We're going to teach you that.
Yeah.
You're going to get that.
I got to learn to turn my mic on. I don't know how much of a disclosure this is, but I lived 2 blocks away from this particular location for about 30 years. I don't know the Kaloses.
That wouldn't be a voting conflict.
No.
But thank you.
Think you're good. All right, so if there's no other further disclosures, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the board for questions through the chair, please. Anyone have any questions? If you want to stay up, Mr. Kalos, we'd appreciate that. Okay, Mr. Silvers? Mike? We're going to have a training session on turning on the mics.
Nobody wants to hear from me anyways. By the way, is the architect or engineer here?
No, he's not.
Okay. I'm looking at the plans, and I want this to be a very positive experience. And my suggestion is that the bathroom that's shown is not gonna work really well with, the lady. You really need to make it larger, either longer, a little bit wider, so she can get into the, I don't think there's a 3-foot door
Right.
that goes into
You're right.
that
We have
bathroom.
to actually have two people, one person on one side, one on the other, and bring her through. She could stand up and walk if you hold her from both sides.
Okay.
So it's a little difficult, you're right.
It-
We have to really renovate that.
But I think that you wanna build, you're gonna spend the money to make this more comfortable for
Mhm.
her.
Yes,
And you need it to make it work.
you're right.
So, my suggestion is to get that 3-foot door in there. You'd have to move the wall and make the window a little smaller, so you can get a 3-foot door. And I think that you need to make the depth of the bathroom bigger in the other direction.
Yes,
So you can have either a wheelchair to get in there and give her more space.
absolutely.
I've taken care of my mother-in-law that had the same sort of illness, and it was very difficult
Yes, I know.
if you don't have the right space constructed. And I'm just giving you a suggestion
Thank
that
you.
you should take care of this issue. Otherwise, you're gonna be building this bathroom and room, and it's gonna give you problems down the road.
Yes, thank you
From
so
day
much.
one.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
So I don't know how you could, make this,
So I would suggest that if the board agrees, we could adopt a condition that says that, that the bathroom that's shown could be expanded by whatever dimension you agree, for example, to the south by up to, if you think 2 feet or 3 feet would be sufficient,
right.
then it'd be up to the applicant if they
You
if
have
they
room to
wish.
go south.
Yeah, so I think if the applicant wishes and the board agrees, you could adopt a condition that says that this variance would cover them to include what's been constructed, as well as an expansion of the bathroom area by up to an additional 3 more feet
That would be
to the
great.
south.
Yeah, I got the 3 feet going south.
Yeah, so
And then put a 3-foot door in there.
So do we need to wait and go through the hearing and make that?
Can we just
Yeah,
make that a
Does the
condition?
rest of the
Yeah,
board
yes.
have to chime into
Yeah,
that and
because
agree
it's
to
gonna
that?
work for them, and maybe they don't realize that the
I have
plan that
comments
they
on it.
show is not gonna work.
Your comment on
I'm
this?
just giving you
Okay,
a
you have a comment on this, Mr.
professional
Dacian? Okay, Mr. Dacian, you want to go
advice
ahead?
on this.
Mr. Dacian wants to chime in on your.
Yeah,
Sure.
it was one of the comments I was gonna bring up. First of all, I love your neighbors. You're doing something great. I don't know if you guys are cooking at home or and inviting all the neighbors.
It's all
over.
those things.
It sounds fantastic. But I have a 93-year-old dad and 80-year-old mom, and we're extremely tight. So I love seeing that love. With that being said, you need to have a handicap access bathroom for her, because at the end of the day, it's going to be very uncomfortable for the caregivers, for yourselves to take care of her. If you could, wheelchair access into the shower would be ideal. But you have to think about those things, because if not, you're going to build a bathroom for her that's not going to be useful.
I understand.
So I would urge you to have a handicap access size bathroom, which will make life a lot easier for all of you. Even the toilet between the sink, the toilet, and the tub, it's too tight.
Yeah, it's
And
very
so
tight
when
in
you're
there, you're
going
right.
in there, it's gonna be very uncomfortable to have her get up and move with the wheelchair in the middle. It's not gonna work. It's just, if this is the purpose of this room, that bathroom will not work for her. So you should definitely 100% redesign it, no matter what. I'll talk about other stuff, but I just wanted to touch on what
Okay.
he was saying.
Okay. So, Mr. Malush, on Mr. Server's comment, how would we proceed with that at this point? Just continue
I would
with
say-
questions, or?
Yeah, and then whoever wants to make, if someone wants to make a
We'll see
motion
a
for
motion
approval.
included in a motion, right?
Yeah, if someone wants to make a motion for approval, they can include
Okay.
that as an added condition. It leaves it up to the applicant if they wish to expand the
Okay,
bathroom.
perfect. All right, so let's continue. Open questions from the board. Through the chair, any other questions? Mr.
Yes.
Dacian?
Yes, I have
Oh, I'm sorry, can we take Ms. Malikoff? Sorry, you're not here, Ms. Malikoff, so I forget about you. Go ahead, Ms. Malikoff, thank you.
You raised my hand. I figured you'd see it.
I don't have the
Um,
Zoom thing on my computer.
I have two comments. One is the landscape plan that's been requested. the landscape plan must be implemented, I think, before the final approval. It's really important that, because that will add to the attractiveness of the house in the neighborhood. And the other thing is the driveway expansion that was unpermitted. I'm not happy with unpermitted buildings that come to us after the fact. And that driveway expansion needs to be properly permitted in compliance with the required setbacks.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Malakoff. Any other questions? Mr. Astion, I think. Mr. Astion, I think you said you had another question?
So sorry. Is that tree, I'm looking at Google Maps, I see this massive tree. Is that
Yeah.
tree on your property or the property next door?
It's next door.
Got it. So it doesn't intrude into your property?
No.
So the setback after this is being built, how many feet between the new additional room and the wall? The property line?
We're talking about what's there right now or the proposed expansion?
The proposed.
So what we're talking about in terms of the expansion for the bathroom would be the opposite side of where the tree is.
No, the bedroom wall, the north bedroom wall.
The-
The north bedroom wall to the end of the property line is how many feet?
It's less than 1 foot from the building to the northern property line.
Less than 1 foot.
Right.
You can't
That's tight.
landscape that.
And why can't you slide it further south?
Well, the issue is it's already been constructed, so that's why we're here, because this is for after
That's
the
why I
fact.
thought maybe you did all
And
the
like we
same.
stated that the applicant's family is part of the property to the north, which is most affected. If they did a unity of title between the two properties, then that north setback would go away, but that's not the case here. But they are most directly impacted by that construction at that minimum setback to the property line.
Is the bathroom constructed?
Yes.
Yeah,
But they could-
everything's already built. This is not proposed construction,
No, it's
board.
after the fact,
Everything
right.
that's after the fact.
Well, we're proposing an expansion.
No,
Well, yeah, no,
well,
it-
as part of the approval, it's been
Yes.
discussed in
It gives them
making
the
the
option,
bathroom.
because they may have actually issues at the time of building permit. If the bathroom doesn't meet the minimum requirements, then that could be an issue with the building department. So I think the expansion of the bathroom allows them to potentially address that comment from building if the bathroom is undersized.
Wouldn't that be required, because they'd have to get a permit, it would be
Yes, they have to
required
get a
that the bathroom be handicap accessible with all the proper
Like I said, yeah,
dimensions?
right, and I can't speak to that because I'm not part of the building department, but I think with the motion, with the recommendation to allow them to expand the bathroom, that gives them the flexibility in meeting that requirement. If it's a comment, or if they choose to on their own, decide to expand the bathroom to make it larger, as Mr. Silvers had.
Yeah, so I think, just to clarify, so you have the two variances that we're looking at, and then, based on the discussion we've had, they would have to pull a permit and make changes to the bathroom, and it'd have to be handicap access with all the proper dimensions. So, if there's not, is there any additional comments? If not, I want to kind of maybe, before we take a formal vote, kind of take a little bit of a straw vote, and just see how everyone's feeling is on the application. Do you see any issues with anyone up on the board not approving?
Well,
Mr. Aronson, go ahead.
if I'm-
Put your mic on, please.
If I may, I agree with what Ms. Malakoff said, and I'm wrestling with that because her suggestion was that we don't approve this application until the landscape plan has been approved. And I'm just wondering if staff has a comment on that.
So we do have a condition requiring the landscape plan, so they can make that part of their building permit plan. So we're not going to approve the building permit after the fact until it includes the landscape component. So it'll be all part of the building permit plan. Regarding the driveway in front, we left it open the possibility for them to apply for the right-of-way permit from Public Works. And if they can get that permitted, then that's fine. If not, they will have to remove that. You could add a condition stating that a right-of-way permit shall be granted for the driveway in front, or it shall be removed if the permit cannot be granted prior to the issuance of a CO for the expansion.
If I could just read something, maybe it will give more clarification. It says, in order to further mitigate the requested variances, staff is recommending as a condition of approval that a full landscape plan be submitted for review and approval as part of the building permit application. Staff is also recommending that the unpermitted driveway expansion on Prairie Avenue be removed or permitted in compliance with the required setback and open space requirements. So it sounds like that's covering all that, and I understand Ms. Malikoff's concern, but they're gonna have to do that, because they're gonna have to pull a permit, it's gonna be checked. So I wouldn't say make them get that approved and do that first. It makes no sense when the conditions are, everything's covered in the conditions. And then we would add, however, Mr. Silvers wanted to, frame it, or someone in a motion, the expansion of the bathroom, handicap access as part of the approval of the permit, if that helps clarification.
Thank you.
So, any other questions? Okay, before motion, just kind of straw vote, are we all looking like we don't have any other major issues? I think we covered everything that would be a major issue. Okay. So with that, I'll open it up for a motion.
I would move that we permit this after-the-fact variance subject to the conditions that we've discussed.
Does that include the provision to allow expansion of the bathroom by up to 3 feet to the south?
As discussed, yes.
Okay.
Do you need that? Is that enough?
Yep. Do I have a second on that motion?
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Mr. Silvers?
Second by Mr. Silvers. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Let me just call out Ms. Malikoff.
Yes, aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have done a roll call.
Thank you. That motion carries 6-0.
Okay,
The variance of-
congratulations and good luck. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Okay? Okay, next, we have a new application, ZBA 22-0137, 5500 Lagos Drive. There's 2 variances being requested. Mr. Belush, can you please?
Sure, and thank you.
tee
Just
up
to
that item
clarify,
for
this
us?
is
Thank
not
you.
after the fact, so this would be for proposed construction. An application has been filed requesting variances from the minimum required street side setback and maximum lot coverage in order to construct a partial second-floor addition to an existing single-family home. The 2 variants requested, the first is for a variance from the minimum required street yard setback of 15 feet in order to construct a second-floor addition following the existing setback of the ground floor, which ranges from 5.7 feet to 6.8 feet. As noted in our report, staff does believe that practical difficulties exist for the construction of a second-floor addition to the subject property. Shifting the addition to the north to comply with the required street side setback would cover the deeply recessed courtyard that exists on the property now, which would also dramatically increase the lot coverage for the site, far beyond the minimal lot coverage increase that's been requested with variance number 2. It would also present structural challenges with the second floor, to construct the second floor not aligning with the first floor walls below. The second variance is a variance from the maximum lot coverage of 30% for a 2-story home in order to construct a ground floor addition and second floor addition onto the existing home with a lot coverage of 41.9%. Now, the maximum lot coverage for the existing pre-1965 single-story home is 50%. And the project, the home does comply with that lot coverage as it is currently 40.8%. But once you construct a second floor, that lot coverage then goes down to 30%. So absent any other additions on the property, just adding a second floor would require a variance. Now, they are increasing that lot coverage slightly by proposing the construction of an area between the garage and the house, which is now a covered breezeway, and that's going to be infilled with some additional construction. Part of that now is exempt from lot coverage, so it does increase the lot coverage from 40.8% to 41.9%. Staff believes that the location and design of the existing house does result in practical difficulties for the construction of any additions on the site and is recommending approval of the application. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Jelpe.
Yeah, before we do that, Board, do we have any disclosures? No disclosures? Okay, Mr. Gelpi, 10 minutes, that'd be enough? If you need more time, let me know.
That'd be fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nick Jelpe, 5500 Lagos. I'm the owner and the architect for the project. So we're both present here. Also, former planning board member, most recently vice chair, so I have a special place in my heart for you, Daniel. Anyway, thank you. I'm also the father of 4, which is why I'm here. If we could bring up the presentation, it's a bit of a special house that we recently had a Board of Adjustment variance issued in 2016 when we purchased the property, and we did a small addition of 400 square feet. And if you look at the site plan, you can see it's a deep U-shaped house. It used to be, if you see that dashed line there, it used to be kind of a J shape. And when we purchased it, it was 2 bedrooms. We added on an extra bedroom, and now it's really a 3-bedroom home. When we moved in, we had 2 kids, and I've since had twins. We now have 4 kids, and they're living in bunk beds. And so we have unused space that we'd like to add on to the house. And if you'll bear with me for a few minutes, I'll just sort of walk you through the house to help you understand it. It's a bit of a unique house. You can see why we need to add on to it the way we do. I think what's so special is we built out the southern wing of the house. The front door is deep at the back of this courtyard, which is kind of nice. That courtyard becomes an outdoor room and a space that we use quite often. This is the view from the front door. And that was after we moved in back in 2016. It was like a rare foggy day in Miami Beach. And then a few more views, and the deep courtyard provides a sense of privacy, even though the front door is quite open. This was a model of what we added in the last go-around. So that's what we added onto the house. And then we clad the exterior in these unique tiles that are precast tiles, and they're hung on precast clips. And it sort of animates, this is the south facade, and it's also kind of an insulating layer. These are the elevations of the existing house. So you see the 2 wings on the top, east elevation that shows the new piece on the left and the old piece on the north. And again, where that roof jog is where the old house ended, and then we added on, again, a little bit, and you can kind of see it there. So it's a curious, kind of playful house. This was the addition. It's a bedroom for our kids, and it has windows that are kind of misaligned, and one is on the floor, one is up high, one is like at furniture height. These were some of the clips, these were the panels that we added on to produce that kind of fun texture, kind of like a wave pattern being on Miami Beach. We thought that was cool. We won an award from the Miami Design Preservation League, probably most proud of this award because they can be very hard to please, the Preservation League, and we were really happy about that. The project was published in Tropic Magazine, called Little House Big Ideas, as well as in Dwell Magazine in 2017. We also received an AIA Design Award for the house. And I'll just walk you through the plans real quick. Basically, that is, we're adding 100 square feet. That is to connect, I'll show you in the plan, but basically our laundry room is in the garage at the moment, and while we're going to all this effort, we would like to sort of bring that in and connect the floor plan from the house to the garage while we're at it. So you see that there in red. Here's the existing floor plan, and I'll click to the next, and you'll see there on the top, that is the connector. On the left is an existing powder room, so we kind of maintain that, and then we're just connecting with glazing, basically creating a kind of mudroom entry with laundry room and putting our mechanical closet there. And then this is the upper floor. We've shifted that addition all the way to the west, which is the rear of our lot. So we've pushed it back from the front setback, so it has an easier presence on the street. As with all second floor additions, the trick is really locating where to bring the stair down. So if I go back, you can see this kind of fits into what is an existing playroom, a kind of small room at the moment. So we actually explored putting the addition on the north side of the house over the kitchen. We have skylights there, and actually gaining access to the site was going to prove not so feasible for construction. So on the south, we have a little bit easier access. You can see, I would just preface this by saying this is schematic. We still really need to study the elevation, but just to give you an idea of massing, on the top is the low profile of our home. It's a 1-story, and then on the bottom is what that would look like once we add the second floor. And I'm not 100% that we'll extend the existing tiles onto the new addition, but just to kind of give an idea about that. And then I'll end, here's a section, so you see the second floor through the stair. And then I'll end with this rendering. So you see the second floor kind of pushed back from the street towards the golf course. There's a large tree back there. And that is basically it. And happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Let me first go ahead and open up the public comment. Anyone on Zoom?
There's nobody online with their hand raised?
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment. I'll go ahead and open it up for any board questions or discussion. Through the chair, anyone have any questions?
I just have a curiosity question. What gave you the idea to create the bubble effect on the outside of the house? It looks really cool, but it just...
I'm a professor at FIU, and a lot of my research is into fabrication details. And I had been researching insulating concrete. So one point was to kind of clad the existing so that you wouldn't clearly see what was new and old. So I thought we'll add on, instead of just restuccoing it, we'll hang this sort of lightweight insulating concrete panels. And then also really, I worked for a great architect in New York named Stephen Hall, where most of our projects deal with issues of natural light and shadows. So I wanted to animate the facade, and it faces due east, so as the sun comes up, it casts those horizontal shadows on the facade, and every day it's something new. So it becomes quite dynamic.
Yeah, and good job with the lighting of it, too.
With the what?
With the lighting.
Oh, thank you, yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Malakoff, thank you.
I've been to that house. It's absolutely stunning. And I think the additions make a lot of sense, and they're very well designed. And I just want to congratulate Mr. Gelby.
Was that your disclosure that you've been to the house? A little late. It's okay. I think, Mr. Aronson, you had a question?
A couple. Mr. Gilby, we had no public comment. Is there any, have you had any feedback from the neighbors with regard to adding the second story?
Only supportive comments from my neighbors saying, what are you doing? And I've showed them. Our house is somewhat dwarfed by our neighbors.
Right.
The house to the south of us was demoed and rebuilt. It was a Chof Levy Fishman house, and it started at 13 feet, base flood plus freeboard, and then they went up the max height, including seeking a height exception, I think. So, the top of our roof is about 12 feet. That house starts, at 13 feet and then goes up another 27. So I think, in terms, there's been no controversy about it, to answer your question.
Have you discussed it with any of the neighbors? Are they aware of it?
Yeah, neighbors to the north and to the south immediately.
Okay. And you sort of answered my second question, which was in the surrounding properties, how many of them are already 2 floors?
I would, to the east of our property, across Lagoras Drive,
right.
they're more single story. On the west side, on the golf course side, I would say they're all 2 stories, with the exception of ours. Maybe there's a few to the south of us. And recently, the street has undergone a lot of redevelopment, renovations and flips, and honestly, we bought the house at a great time. There is no way for us to sell the house because we would have to buy another house, and we're such a large family, and we love the house. And so, we want to stay there and just be more comfortable in it.
Any other questions? I'll just say, I did go and look at the property, and I walked the block, and I agree with you, Skelpie. Actually, the houses on that side, almost all of them, are kind of towering over you, and I think with what you're going to do, it's going to fit in great with the neighborhood. Great location right on the golf course, and 4 kids. I guess you got twins, so that's surprise, right?
Yeah.
So, with that being said,
I'm sorry, I want one more.
You have another question,
just
Mr.
a thought.
Estian? Go ahead.
Yeah, just curiosity. On the utility where you're going to connect to the garage, are you creating a wall between the utility and the washer and dryer room? Is that a guest bathroom there?
That is an existing bathroom. Maybe if we could pull the presentation back up.
But that's your guest bathroom, right?
It's like, the powder room, yeah.
Right.
Actually, there is a shower in it at the moment, so we kind of use it. It is the 3rd bathroom.
But that's still the room for the guests. the bathroom for the guests.
Yes, and we're hoping that the upstairs bathroom now, if you look at the upstairs, so it's really my wife and I are going to move upstairs. We're going
Right.
to leave the kids on the ground. And then the other small room, it's really, the idea was that it's a home office.
No, I was talking about the utility bathroom downstairs. Is that the guest bathroom?
Yes, yes. You see it here at the moment, it's the guest bathroom.
Right.
And we're actually planning, I think we're just going to take out the shower. This is not completely up to date.
I mean, you could leave it, but I'm just saying that the connection between the utility room and the bathroom, is that a wall there, or what do you put, are you putting some kind of a
That
door?
would be a pocket door, yeah,
Cool.
between that.
Yeah, I just didn't see it there in the design. Then my only other comment, I mean, it doesn't matter to me, it's just giving you feedback, but on the bathroom, on your upstairs, it's a long walk from the shower to the closet, but that's a matter of taste.
Yes, and truthfully, I defer to my wife on this. That is probably the 10th iteration of that bathroom. But agreed. I'll
Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Are you the landscape architect?
No, I'm not the landscape architect, but I work with a great young guy, a former student who worked for Raymond Jungles named Chris Cabezas, and he'll be the landscape architect.
Gotcha.
Okay, entertain any motions?
I'd move to approve.
Mr. Aronson, motion to approve as presented. Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Essian. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
May I just call on
Congratulations.
Ms. Malakoff?
Oh, Ms. Malakoff,
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Her vote is
Aye.
yes, thank you. That motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, Ms. Gelb.
Thank you, everyone.
luck.
I appreciate it. It's fun to be back. Thank you.
Do you guys want to take a quick break, because the bathroom is a little bit of a walk, or do you want to continue with the next item? Board members, want to take a quick 5-minute break? Leave it up to you guys.
What about the chair? Chair, want
I always, at my age, you always need a break, if you know what I
Okay,
mean.
so I'll second it.
Okay, we'll take a quick 5-minute break. Thank you.
Please stand by. We're going on air in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and reconvene our Board of Adjustment meeting. The next item on the agenda is an appeal that has already come to us, but we reconsidered, and I'll let the City Attorney, Mr. Belush, give the background on it. It's ZBA 23-0146, 1330 15th Street. So I'm going to ask the City Attorney and Mr. Belush to go over this and give the background on it and why we're here, and it's basically because there's new information that they wanted to enter into the record and look for us to do a reconsideration. But let me hand it over to them to go ahead and tee it up. Mr. Belushi.
Sure, thank you,
wanna
Mr.
start?
Chairman. I'll read this file into the record. As you mentioned, this is ZBA 23-0146 for 1330 15th Street. This is an appeal of the decision regarding a non-conforming suite hotel use. An application has been filed appealing a determination of the planning director in connection with a request to reinstate a non-conforming suite hotel use on a property located in a multifamily residential district. As the chairman noted, on May 5th of 2023, following argument and testimony from the property owner, the planning director, and nearby residents, the Board of Adjustment denied the appeal and affirmed the decision of the planning director by a vote of 5-1. However, on June 2nd, 2023, the Board of Adjustment adopted a motion to reconsider its May 5th, 2023 decision to deny the appeal and affirm the decision of the planning director based upon newly discovered evidence by a vote of 5-1. Pursuant to that motion, the appeal was re-noticed for September 8th, today, the Board of Adjustment meeting. I'll ask if Stephen Rothstein would like to add anything.
No, unless the board has any questions as to why we're here today.
I don't have a question why we're here, but I have a question about procedure.
Sure.
Is now the time?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead. Snagwood?
The first hearing, not the part about reconsidering, not the vote to reconsider, but the initial substantive hearing, that remains part of the record, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if this ever went beyond us, we don't have to rehash that stuff for purposes of the record. That remains on the record.
Correct.
And my other question, also in regard to having a record in case someone else were to look at this beyond us, is the information that we were provided in this packet, is this all part of the record, regardless of whether we discuss it or not today?
Yes.
Okay, so the report that's the new evidence, that's part of the record, and the response and the reply to that report are all part of the record, regardless of whether we discuss it.
Correct.
Thank you so
That's
much.
the record below that. If there would be an appeal to the next level, it would be everything that's been discussed, the public comment, everything will be part of the record.
And whatever the standard is at the next level, it would allow that person or those people to review all of the evidence in the record, including the written evidence?
Correct, because they're looking at the record below.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I clarify that?
Go ahead.
One more-
Turn your mic on, Mr. Aronson, please.
As part of the background presentation that was provided to us, we have the summary and the report of the Office of Inspector General.
Correct.
That is part of the record?
Yes.
Specifically? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, anyone have any disclosures? No? Ms. Malakoff, no? So
I mean,
you-
I have a very minor disclosure. I don't even know that it's a disclosure, but Mr. Hudson used to work for my firm probably 15, 20 years ago.
30 years ago.
Goes to show how accurate I am on that one. 30 years ago?
And I'm still scarred, but yes, 30 years ago.
So,
Okay.
yeah, and again, just to kind of finish what was discussed on the timing, there's no need to rehash what's already been discussed, is what you were saying, Mr. Nagler. It's the new evidence, and that's why we agreed to rehear it and repost it and come and listen to what new evidence they wanted to enter into the record. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and give Mr. Hudson, the appellant's attorney, 15 minutes enough, Mr. Hudson? If you need-
I hope it's less than that, but
Okay.
yes, thank you.
If you need more, let me know. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Philip Hudson from Dwayne Morris on behalf of 1330 15th Street LLC. That is the owner of the property that's in question, Mr. Thongaval. The principal is with me. I know you've met him. He's appeared before you before. Can you? I don't want to bump into it. Is that better?
Yeah, there you go, thank you.
Because as soon as I start reading, I'm going to bump into it. So, thank you first for the reconsideration. We appreciate that, and particularly Mr. Rothstein, who recognized immediately that there was a potential issue and supported the reconsideration. And on a personal note, I want to thank you for the 10-mile walk this morning to get here uphill into the wind. I think it was snowing, but I'm not sure. But we're here really on a very simple issue at this point, and that is whether my client intentionally and voluntarily waived his legally established non-conforming use status. And the simple answer is no. I don't want to rehash the prior record because it doesn't matter. The reason we're here is because the OIG report is significant and substantial, and that OIG report, and I hope everybody's at least had a chance to speed read it, is pretty clear. And if you want to just look at page 1, both page 1 and 21, essentially, the intro and the conclusion of that report essentially say the same thing. And the OIG essentially finds that Mr. Thongaval obtained a CU BTR for a use of the property for which he did not intend to apply. Intent is the issue here, right? Did he intend to waive? No. Mr. Mooney in the planning department says that's the basis, that's the evidence that they utilized to come to a decision that he waived. Well, the OIG has found to the contrary. The OIG has found to the contrary, specifically in the next sentence, citing miscommunication, misunderstanding, and/or misinterpretation of the various meanings of the accommodation establishment terminologies throughout the process. If there's confusion, miscommunication, misstatements, there can't be a specific intent because there was confusion. So our position is very simple, and it's consistent with what Mr. Thongaval has said from day one. Here's where the confusion started. It started on an application that was submitted to Miami Beach that was inaccurate. Wasn't approved by Mr. Thongaval. It was changed twice in 2 different places. The OIG report identifies the first change by being made by the permit doctor hired by Mr. Thongaval, and that person admits that they made the change. They don't recall why they made the change, okay? They also don't have the records. Those records were destroyed. The permit doctor records were destroyed. Why would records that are only 2 or 3 years old be destroyed? So that's a huge, important point. But the OIG points out it's the second change that's the most concerning to him, and the one that created, quote, the domino effect, a term that he uses, that started this whole miscommunication process and the lack of clarity. And that is the second alteration, which was a handwritten alteration that changed the use from what should have been hotel, which includes a suite hotel, to apartment building. They could not figure out who did that, but what they essentially did was narrow it to somebody in the city of Miami Beach. And probably, he doesn't come to this conclusion, but he points to this conclusion, that probably somebody in the planning department made that change. We don't know, we're never gonna know. So again, the point is, there has to be evidence in the record, and you guys get to assess that today. What's the evidence in the record? First of all, we gotta look at the evidence in favor of my client. That is that he hasn't waived it. And what evidence is that? That's his testimony, he's already told you that. So now that has to be rebutted. The only way Mr. Mooney has rebutted that, in our view, is through pointing to an application that now the OIG says is fundamentally flawed and created this material problem. I think we win right there. I think that's it. Because the one thing that Mr. Mooney pointed to is no longer reliable, as the OIG has now determined. Therefore, the only evidence that you have is his testimony. But there's more than that. There's letters in the file from 2 of his prior counsel indicating that he had an interest in a suite hotel. The prior owner had a suite hotel designation and CU. The application that was filed that Mr. Mooney relied on in other sections has boxes. Is this a change of use? Is this a change of ownership? Change of ownership was checked. Change of use was not checked. Change of use was never checked on any of the applications filed by my client ever. And as you know, this board knows very well, uses run with properties, they don't run with owners. So when this property was sold, he bought it to use it with the same use and thought he was going to get the same use that he got before, that the prior owner got before, and legally was entitled to. But because of the miscommunication, because of the misunderstanding, because of all of the things that you find in this very well-written 23-page report, there was this confusion. Confusion by allegedly the permit doctor. The gentleman from the permit doctor admits he didn't even know what a suite hotel was. Really? Okay. That's the guy that lost the records, by the way. So what we have here is, in my view, you have to weigh the evidence. That's what you have to do today on this very simple issue of did my client intend to waive. Under Florida law, waiver has to be knowing and intentional. In other words, you have to know what you're waiving, and you have to demonstrate that you're waiving it. My clients testified that he didn't waive it. The form shows that he was not seeking a change of use. He wanted the same change of use. That's a second piece of evidence in his favor. He opened up a resort tax account, and in that file indicated hotel. The state of Florida issued a license, which he still has today, for hotel, right? Hotel includes suite hotel. So you have all of this evidence, which is uncontroverted, and the one piece of evidence that the city relied on, the planning director relied on, to find a waiver is a form that now has zero reliability of evidence. Nothing. So I think your decision is pretty easy today. I think you grant the reconsideration, overrule the planning director, and agree with our appeal, and essentially determine that we have a legally established non-conforming use for a suite hotel. That's really my intro. Happy to answer any questions or point in any particular direction that you might like.
Okay, if you're done, we're going to go ahead and ask for Mr. Kalergis, who's representing Tom Mooney, to come up and present, and you'll have a chance to rebut. Mr. Kalergis?
And Mr. Chair, although we didn't use the full 15 minutes, I'm still going to give Mr. Kalergis the same 15 minutes.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, 15 minutes, yeah. 15 minutes enough?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think we'll need that long.
Okay, thank you.
I'm happy to introduce the city's position, but the bulk of our presentation will be the planning director's testimony. So in short, the basis for the board's motion to reconsider was the expectation that the Inspector General would be issuing a report, and that report was issued. It's in the record. Obviously, we do not object to that. We appreciate that the Inspector General recognizes that the exclusive jurisdiction to hear and decide on appeals from determinations of the planning director lies with the Board of Adjustment, and that's pursuant to the city's related special acts, which is part of our charter. The Inspector General identified evidence of, the report cites to evidence of misunderstanding, of miscommunication, and of misinterpretation. But I must remind the board that the only issue before you is whether the applicant intentionally abandoned a non-conforming use, or whether the use was affirmatively changed to a conforming use. In our code, either one of those would trigger an abandonment when you have a legal non-conforming use. So, as the board is aware, everything really is now down to the forms that were submitted to the City of Miami Beach, particularly that change of use, that CU BTR form, which identified the proposed use as apartment building. Now, the Inspector General report cites to, based on interviews with Mr. Gallo Jr. of the Permit Doctor, and another employee of the Permit Doctor, and also based on emails between the owner and the permit expediter, that the applicant's intent may have been never to change the use to a non-transient apartment building. However, the city's decision is always going to be based on what written submissions are submitted to us. So ultimately, the board has jurisdiction over this appeal if the board agrees with the planning director that the city, as to the city's reliance on the written submissions, then the board should affirm the planning director. If the board disagrees, the board would need to vote by 5/7, 5 affirmative votes because you only have 6 members, to reverse. So let's see. One thing I would like to point out that Mr. Hudson raised in his presentation is the Inspector General spent a lot of time trying to identify who made the change to the form, and there's sort of conflicting information that the Inspector General wrestled with. Ultimately, the Inspector General could not conclude exactly who made the change. He did cite to interview testimony with a Permit Doctor employee that the employee admitted to swapping the page out, and the employee admitted to submitting the page that has the strike through and that specifically indicates apartment building. He did not conclude that particular employee made the change, but that employee is who swapped the page. He made no conclusion whatsoever that the document was altered by a city employee, and I think that's very important for the board to be reminded of, because the IG concluded that the document was altered before it was uploaded to the city system. So with that, I'll turn it over to the planning director for his presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Mooney?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Mic okay? Okay. Like Mr. Hudson, I don't want to get too close to the mic, so as Nick correctly indicated, just as sort of a housekeeping measure, the IG did not conclude who made the modification to the application in question. And I think that's important because clearly no one from the planning department did that. We couldn't, because when it was sent to us as part of the review, it was already uploaded, and nobody from the finance department indicated that they had done it. So I don't believe that anybody from the city had made that modification. I also wanted to point out that as you saw in the previous memo, that was part of the May public hearing, as well as the updated memo that was part of your package. The decision that I had reached was based on a lot more than just the application that was submitted. I won't go through the whole lengthy presentation, but I just wanted to make that clear on the record. The only thing that I did want to just go over very briefly as part of this presentation are some of our responses to the OIG report, because that was the basis for this reconsideration. The board did grant a reconsideration of this based upon the fact that the OIG was preparing a report. That final report was issued. You all have a copy of it. And this is all in the memo, but I just wanted to go through it very briefly. As a threshold matter, obviously the OIG concluded that there was no malfeasance or neglect by any city employee. In recognition of the board's exclusive authority over the matter, the OIG report does not provide a recommendation regarding this appeal. So obviously this decision rests solely with you. A couple of things to point out with regard to the submission of the application. When the application was initially submitted for the CU and the BTR in late 2019, early 2020, one of the things that's really important to point out is that the previous owner of the property, before Mr. Thangavel purchased the property, that owner closed the previous BTR and the previous resort tax account. And that was not mentioned in the OIG report. I did mention that in my previous memo. And so the new CUBTR application that was submitted by the permit doctor was for a new CUBTR because the previous owner had closed it. We're not refuting the intention. We think that that's pretty clear, that it appears that both the permit doctor and the owner of the property did have the intent to do some type of transient use. But in terms of the application that was submitted for a new CUBTR, what was submitted to planning, what was reviewed by planning, was very clearly and unambiguously for a non-transient residential apartment. The OIG also pointed out that under the planning review, that there were no comments as to why a residential apartment building was approved. And as we stated in the memo, if a proposed use is permitted in a district, the zoning reviewer is not going to question that. So there was no need for the zoning reviewer to reach out to a property owner or an applicant and say, why do you want to do a conforming use? If there had been an issue with it, like for instance, if they had submitted a BTR application for a short-term rental, then that would have been denied and that would have been questioned. But non-transient apartments were and are still a permitted use, and so that was not going to be questioned. With regard to the alteration of the BTR application, whether or not handwritten modifications should have been provided is really up to the applicant. The applicant would have been responsible for that. Once something is uploaded and sent to planning, if the use proposed is permitted, the planning reviewer is not going to get into the details of the actual application. They're looking solely at what is the use being proposed. That use is permitted, and that is what ended up being approved. The rest we've already gone over. The CUBTR was issued for a non-transient apartment in May of 2020. There was no application for the short-term rental of those transient units. That CUBTR was renewed in December of 2020, and it wasn't until late September of 2021, where a application was finally filed for a CUBTR for short-term rentals. That was denied at that time. However, at that point, it was more than a year past when Sweet Hotels became a non-conforming use. As such, I had no authority to issue a CU and a BTR for what had been a prohibited use for well over a year. And so I think that's really what that comes down to in terms of what my authority was. And again, based upon what has been submitted, we believe that the time has lapsed in terms of being able to obtain a CUBTR for a non-conforming use. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I think if council has any questions, I believe now would be the time for me to answer questions.
Okay, yeah, now go ahead, and you want an opportunity to rebut, Mr. Hudson?
I'd like to rebut. I have no questions of Mr. Mooney.
Okay, go ahead, because after you're done, we'll open up to public comment, and then we'll have questions from the board after. So, Ms. Glergis, you had a...
Just a thought, but would you like to present your rebuttal after? Usually the petitioner's rebuttal is at the very end after the public hearing, so you can respond.
I know that's because I've done this before. I think it's wrong, though. I think everybody should hear everything, and then.
Because it might, and I agree, because it might answer someone's question that would have a question. So, I mean, if it's proper protocol, and I guess I'll ask the city attorney.
I don't object to that.
You okay with that? Okay. 10 minutes to rebut, will that suffice?
Hopefully less.
Okay, thank you.
So I think what you just heard from Mr. Mooney is, Mr. Hudson was right. We relied on that flawed application. That's what I heard anyway. So let's go back to essentially the same paragraph that's in two places in the OIG report, and that's on page 1 and page 21. And Mr. Mooney just told you that he relied on what was in that form, which normally you would do, but the OIG finds in this report that the city essentially made an error by doing so because there were two different changes made by two different types of handwriting that were unexplained, that were not initialed, that were not dated, any of those things that we all do when we change a document, right? What the OIG report does say is that it, let me actually find it, is that Mr. Thangaval was issued CUs for which he did not intend to apply. We're finished, because Mr. Mooney's now telling you, because that he got this new use, and the new use was a conforming use, it extinguishes the old use. Well, he got a use he didn't intend to apply for. And that's the primary conclusion of this OIG report. While there's lots of reasons, and we could sit here for hours going over what the city didn't do, what it should have done, the long story short is that application, with respect to that phrase, apartment building, with handwriting that's unidentifiable and is a change, is a strikeout with nothing next to it, is unreliable. That's what he relied on. That's what they're saying was the change of use to a conforming use. That is flawed, it is unreliable, and you cannot rely on that. So you are back to my client's testimony, you're back to the resort tax stuff that shows hotels, you're back to the form where it says we're not changing the use, and the prior use for that property was a suite hotel. All of the evidence, I carry little scales of justice in my pocket. All of the evidence, that's our side of the scale goes down. It never comes back up, because there is zero reliable evidence to suggest that my client intended to waive anything, and the OIG has so found. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we give the other side time to rebut, Mr. City Attorney? What's
No.
proper protocol? Okay.
No.
Okay, so proper protocol would be to open public comment now, right?
At this juncture,
Okay,
yes.
so we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to open up the public comment, and I'll first entertain anyone that's here in the commission chambers. Please come to the podium and state your name. 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi there.
Go ahead.
Hi there. My name is Gail Durham. I live at 1455 West Avenue. I received the notice because I'm within 375 feet of this property. I oppose this transient use at this property. In a recent interview by CNBC, Mayor Gelber said, commercial predatory companies are turning our residential areas into a flop house. I believe this statement basically sums up the situation we have here today. I was the president of my neighborhood for 12 years. I'm no longer, but during that time period, we had monthly meetings, and the neighborhood consensus is we do not want transient. And during my time as the neighborhood president, we had hotels prohibited, we had suite hotels prohibited, and then we had bed and breakfast prohibited. So there's nothing transient allowed in our neighborhood now, and that's the way we like it. The applicant could build a brand new residential building up to 50 feet high, and he could actually, I think, have an office there, and that's what we prefer. We've taken straw votes, and that's what the neighborhood prefers. I do not agree with Mr. Hudson's interpretation of the IG report, and it is his interpretation. What I think is more plausible is that the full-time apartment use was the likely intention. The applicant purchased the property the end of 2019, and then we had COVID, and you couldn't rent even if you had a hotel. So when he made his application for an apartment building full-time rental, I think he intended to do that because in 2020 COVID time, you couldn't rent transient. It was against the law, even for all the hotels in Miami Beach. And then again, the year after, I think he did apply again, according to the IG report, renew it for an apartment building. I'm sorry I'm going over time, but I've been working on
So
my
wha-
statement.
Was that 2 minutes? Do one? Okay. What?
Yeah, I asked for 3
Yeah,
minutes.
one,
if that's
one,
okay.
one more minute. I know we have a lot of people on Zoom, so we're gonna have to.
Oh, I didn't
we're
know
gonna have
that.
to
Okay.
abide by.
Well,
pretty
there's-
strict on the 3 minutes. So go ahead, another minute.
Okay,
Ms.
so
Durham.
one more thing I wanted to say. New information from the IG report. I didn't know this, but the applicant hired very experienced attorney, Wayne Pathman, before he even purchased the property to find out about the zoning and get advice. Wayne Pathman has been a land use attorney for like 25 years, a former president of Chamber of Commerce, and I even went up against him many times because he represented transient properties in my neighborhood. So I'm sure Wayne Pathman gave him very good advice, and based on that advice, he decided to do a full-time residential, nevertheless. I just want to say, I think it's strange that we're having this hearing. I don't think it's proper. I don't think it's justified. I think a revote was not initiated according to Robert's rules by the members of this board. I think it was initiated by staff, and I don't think that's proper. So I just wanted to make that heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a correction, since I'm a former chair, Wayne was chairman of the board of the Miami Beach Chamber, not the president. Just want to. He was chairman of the board, not president. I'm a past chair, too. Just wanted to make sure that was corrected. Next, 3 minutes. Please state your name.
And I'll need to swear you in. I don't believe you were here earlier. Gail was. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and I'm going to set the clock for 3 minutes for you to address the board.
Perfect. Good morning, Board of Adjustment. My name is Nick Futernick. I'm an owner at 1326 15th Street, directly next to the building in question. I own a unit along with my two siblings, Xander and Elle Futernick. My brother Xander is offering testimony today, too. My siblings and I bought our unit in 2021 with the understanding that residential neighborhood RM1 does not allow short-term rental. In conducting our due diligence into our purchase of our unit, we saw that none of our neighbors were operating a short-term building, and we did not want to live next to an Airbnb under any circumstance. The unit I jointly own at 1326 15th Street is part of a plan with my brother and sister to live in our unit on Miami Beach, and when we get married, to move out and build our lives in separate homes. At that later time, it is our plan to rent our unit out to long-term resident, just like other units in our building do. It is worth sharing with the board that when we considered our purchase, one of the guiding factors was short-term rentals would not be allowed. We knew short-term rental property would yield a higher return for us renting it out, but our plan was based around my siblings and I living in the unit we purchased until we are ready to grow our families. This plan involves selecting a property where we could both enjoy living and have a good investment for future income. This combination was found with great location and RM1 zoning. I would like to leave you with one last comment. The owner of 1330 can easily rent out his unit for long-term rental and make a return on his investment just as we would. While he won't make as much money doing long-term rental as he would Airbnb, his business will certainly not be ruined. The owner does not live in the building, and he just wants to make more money at the expense of us. I urge the board to reconsider in fairness of a community and reject the appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the chambers? Please state your name. 3 minutes.
Suarez.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Suarez. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and I'll.
Oddly enough, I'm also an owner at 1320 15th Street, adjacent to this property. I'm a commission candidate for Group 5 for one reason, and that's to help Miami Beach community and its residents. I actually got started because I fought against 3 Airbnb hotels in my neighborhood. And I had the opposite, where an inspector general report came back and said those permits should have never been issued. And when the Board of Adjustment heard that and looked at the IG reports, they still sided with the developers. Now it's flipped. We have a developer who has come into a residential neighborhood and wants to essentially destroy it. This neighborhood has had residents for 30 years on the block. They don't want to wake up to unknowns. They don't want to have their families live next to potential sex offenders, pedophiles, criminals. That's what you are inviting into this community if you approve this project. You know, everyone speaks about affordable housing. That's actually the second biggest concern I get when I've knocked on essentially 5,000 doors in Miami Beach. And right now, with these predatory investors turning our residential units into apartment hotels, Airbnb hotels, suite hotels, whatever you want to call it, they are essentially taking out anywhere where an individual or a family can rent on an annual basis for a nightly use. And it's ruining our city. You have the opportunity now to actually save this neighborhood. And I hope you guys do the right thing, because the families that I'm gonna put in my unit, Nick's families, they don't wanna live next to a transient use. And I'm assuming you guys wouldn't either. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suarez. Anyone else in the commission chambers? Okay, we'll go ahead and go over to Zoom, and each person will get sworn in. I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Mr. City Attorney.
Our first
And Mr.
caller,
Blues.
sorry, our first caller is Raf Coreen.
Good morning, Raf. Are you there?
Hello?
Yes, hi. Please
Yep.
raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and I'm going to set the clock for 3 minutes for you to address the board. You may
Perfect.
proceed.
Thank you for your time. Good morning, Board of Adjustment. My name is Raphael Coreen, and I'm a renter at 1326 15th Street. I did also testify before you in person earlier in May. And last time, a huge number from our community showed up to testify over video and in person. Some may not have had the privilege to take away from their day for a second time to testify before your board on the same topic. But I understand many neighbors wrote on this board via email, and I would definitely encourage you to remember and consider those voices in opposition today. I explained to you last time when I initially moved into this apartment, I was surprised to find out that there was a problematic short-term rental operation taking place in the building next door. Over the following months, this surprise turned into frustration, as and I mentioned this last time, but we have to deal with loud and indecent people who are staying in the apartment beside us. And whilst our neighborhood does have a peaceful and friendly atmosphere, most of the guests who stay next door are exactly the opposite. We mentioned also last time that they openly take illegal drugs, park in our spots, leave trash around everywhere, are a nuisance to the community. And our complaints to the owners who don't live there and are never around to actually see these people or vet who they're letting into these buildings fall on completely deaf ears. I did move to Miami from my hometown of Zurich, Switzerland, about 2 years ago. And really, the only stain on my new residency is living next to a tenement building being passed as an unsupervised hotel in my neighborhood. And I'd really like to see this neighborhood grow with the families and other professional workers who bring new energy to Miami Beach. And this will not happen in neighborhoods where ruckus tourists are intermingled with these residential homes. The area for tourism and their hotels is on and near Collins Avenue. There's a beautiful area for that. Yeah, those areas do welcome tourists. Our neighborhood does not. I do understand from the staff report that much of this case has, devolved into what that appellant and his representative at the permit doctor intended to file versus what was actually filed in the city. That being said, the appellant is not grandfathered in to operate this Airbnb. That train, in my opinion, has departed. And I would urge the appellant to take the next train that is available today, which is that, he can, open his units to long-term rentals and contribute to our community in a positive way instead of in the way that he's doing right now. I hope I haven't taken too much time, but, I do appreciate you hearing my concerns again. And I hope the board will find it in the interest of our neighborhood to reject the appeal and affirm your planning director, reaffirming also your decisions in May. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening.
Our next caller is Xander Futternick.
Good morning, Xander.
Hi.
Hi, I'm just going to swear you in before you address the board. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to set the clock for 3 minutes with a 1-minute warning for you to address the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Board of Adjustment. My name is Xander Futternick, and I'm an owner at 1326 15th Street, next door to 1330. Back in May of this year, I stood before you in person and offered impassioned testimony as to why 1330 should be denied the ability to open an unsupervised hotel next to my building. At that time, I told you about how my bedroom and office window faced directly to the entrance of his building. I told you about the endless trash, late night noise, and party ruckus of people staying there, coming and going at all hours. Those who are here to vacation belong in a proper hotel with on-site assistance. There is no concierge to call when things get rowdy. Expansion of party zones into our residential neighborhood drives away long-term residents we need to build a community on Miami Beach. The second point I made in May is the one I would kindly request you consider most this morning. The appellant has suggested that this change was made without his approval by the permit doctor. The OIG investigated this claim, and I read through their entire 88-page report. What struck me most is that this public service board is becoming intermingled in a private company dispute. The OIG report specifically states on page 21 that the license issued, the license the appellant applied for, is a result of, quote, the miscommunication and misunderstanding of the difference between a suite hotel and short-term rental by Mr. Thangovel and the permit doctor employees, end quote. The OIG report is clear that if a mistake was made, it was made between two private parties. The appellant's lawyer incorrectly stated this morning that the OIG report suggests the planning office changed the application. This is incorrect. The OIG report does not say this. If you unintentionally run a red light, you still face the consequences for doing so. This board is not in a position to remedy the error of a private party. Remember, it took the appellant nearly 3 years to bring this matter up. This significant gap in time draws question into the sincerity of the so-called mistake. When you weigh the evidence, it's too convenient to claim a small oversight. Our street's peace is at stake here. The crux of this case rests on, will the board make an exception? Doing so would harm our neighborhood, reduce containment of partying on Miami Beach, and would open the door to this case as precedent for others to make a similar claim to your board. As a business owner myself, I sincerely understand the appellant's concern that a business consultant may have screwed him over. The United States has a strong justice system to handle such matters. I would urge the appellant to take legal action against the permit doctor for the recourse he is looking for. This solution works for everybody. It preserves our neighborhood and provides the financial relief the appellant requests. Your board is not convened to remedy the mistake of a private company, but to protect the residents of Miami Beach and apply the codes as they are written. I'm seeking peace for our street. I urge you to please support our neighborhood and reaffirm your decision earlier this year. Thank you.
With that, unless somebody raises their hand in the next few seconds, that concludes the callers on Zoom.
Okay. So with that being said, if there's no more public comment, we're going to go ahead and close the public comment. Okay, I'm going to open it up to my board for questions through the chair, please. One at a time, let me know who has questions. Mr. Aronson?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So I have questions for both parties, and they largely involve the same thing, but I'd like to make a short statement first so you guys know where I'm coming from here. It seems to me that the role of this board is to determine whether or not a non-conforming use was abandoned here. That's what we need to decide. I appreciate all the public comment, but we're sort of limited here. We need to determine whether a non-conforming use was actually abandoned. And for whatever it's worth, this is my analysis. I go to the statute which talks about abandonment. It's section 118.394. And the first sentence of Part B deals with that very specifically. And it says, and this is what I think we need to decide, it says, if there is an intentional and voluntary abandonment of a non-conforming use for a period of more than 183 consecutive days, comma, or if a non-conforming use is changed to a conforming use, said use shall lose its non-conforming status. So I think what we really need to focus on here is an application of that statute to the circumstances here. And I think that staff, Mr. Mooney, is relying on the second part of this particular sentence, the or part. If a non-conforming use is changed to a conforming use, said use shall lose its non-conforming status. So that's what I'm looking at. Now, I'm also looking at the OIG report, which appears to state quite clearly that no malfeasance was conducted by the city staff. They did not, the city staff did not change the CUBTR application. So when it was presented to them, the non-transient apartment status was presented to the city. It was logged in at the application stage. So with that background, these really are my questions. And I would ask Mr. Mooney first. When you receive a CUBTR, does the city rely on that? Or does the city have, in general, go out and is required to make a determination whether the applicant really meant what they said? How does that process work?
The city obviously relies on the information in the application that has been submitted. If the use is a conforming use and there does not need to be any further analysis, the zoning reviewer will approve it. If it's not a permitted use, or a use that is permitted subject to certain criteria, and those criteria have not been included or addressed in the application, the reviewer may deny it with comments. So it really depends upon the application, but generally speaking, if it is a permitted use in the zoning district, say somebody wants to do retail in a CD2, a bookstore, that's permitted, it will be approved, and then that would be the end of the zoning review.
Is there a procedure where the city calls the applicant or the owner and says, this is what you're applying for, we just want to check it, we want to make sure that this is exactly what you're applying for?
No, there's not.
You rely on the paper that's submitted to you?
Correct.
So in this case, the owner hired an agent, the permit doctor or whatever they call it, Mr. Gallo, to go in there. Does that make a difference to the city when the application is submitted by an agent for the owner? Do they rely on the papers the same way as if it was submitted directly by the owner?
The reliance would be the same regardless of who submitted the application, whether it was the owner or somebody on behalf of the owner.
Has there ever been a suggestion to you that the application itself by the permit doctor, let's put aside what was said on the application, but that the permit doctor had no authority to represent the owner of this property?
That was never represented to us.
This status as a non-transient apartment, which was determined by the city, what's the renewal process? Because this was renewed a second time, correct?
When a CUBTR is issued, the renewal process is every October 1st. So in this particular instance, the CUBTR for non-transient apartment was issued in May of 2020. The renewal came up September 30th of 2020. I believe they paid the fee in December of 2020, and so it was renewed effective October 1, 2020 through September 30th, 2021. And then it's renewed automatically if the fees are paid.
And how is that done? Do they receive an application or a notice that the status is in this case, a non-transient apartment, and that there's a fee to renew that status? Is that, I mean, are they noticed specifically of the status when there's in the renewal process?
My understanding is that a renewal notice is sent out to everybody who holds a BTR, and the fee can be paid online, and once the fee is paid to renew that BTR, then the BTR is renewed for another year.
But the renewal, what I'm trying to get at here, I apologize, I'm not being terribly clear. In the renewal process, is the applicant advised of what status is being renewed?
I believe that the applicant is advised that it's a renewal of the existing BTR. So whatever the existing BTR is for. In this particular instance, it was a BTR for non-transient apartments. They were advised that this would be the renewal for non-transient apartments.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mooney. I'd like to, if I may, address the appellant. Mr. Hudson, are you suggesting, well, first of all, you would agree that the OIG report provides that there was no malfeasance by the city. You would agree to that, correct?
I would agree that's what the reports, what those words are in certain portions, but if you read the report, it points out probably 15 different errors that the city made. But yes, I would agree that those words that came out of your mouth do appear on the face of the report.
Well, let me be very specific. You're not taking the position at this hearing that the city changed that application, correct?
I can't, because no one knows. The OIG did the work and couldn't figure it out. But if you read the report closely, it suggests that it appears that it was changed after it was submitted to the city.
After it was submitted to the city?
No, let's be clear. Before it was uploaded into finance, it says that that's a difference. There's a difference there. It's unclear who did that and when it was done. That's what the report came to. That's the conclusion the report came to.
Well, it came to a lot of conclusions, but I thought the report.
It says before it was entered into the finance system, there are multiple systems in the city. He explains the whole process. There are multiple systems, and as I understand it, and you can ask Mr. Mooney or get the finance director, the finance is a second or third or fourth step. It's not originally received by them.
So the way I read this report, I thought Mr. Gallo from Permit Doctor agreed that when it was submitted to the city, the suite hotel portion had been crossed off, and in lieu of that,
No.
it stated apartment.
Miss Suvera, who works for Gallo, admitted that she changed one portion. She's the one that changed the first alteration, and that she did not know who changed the second alteration. She couldn't recall why she changed the first, and all of their records were destroyed.
I understand that. But, okay, let's move on.
But no, let's not, I want to continue my answer to that question in a series that you've asked a few minutes ago. If you go to page 21 of 23 of the OIG report, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth full sentence, or fifth full paragraph. In the middle of the paragraph, and I'm just going to read it for the record, and you guys can find it when you.
The paragraph starting with what?
The miscommunication.
Okay.
Right? If you go down about 6 lines, you'll see it in the middle of the paragraph, in fact, a sentence that begins, in fact. In fact, it was the altered application that set forth the domino effect that resulted in confusion that led to granting of a different license than what may have been intended. That's consistent with the other 2 paragraphs on page 1 and 21 that I've showed you, that the intent problem goes back to the flawed document. My client got something he didn't intend to do. Therefore, if you use the second part after the comma that you acknowledged, we never intended to get what was issued. It was issued. Then your question about renewal, you asked the same question 4 times differently of Mr. Mooney, hoping that there would be a signature or some sort where my client showed that he waived anything, but there wasn't. He simply got a notice to pay a bill, and he paid a bill. So I go back to the fact that the fundamental conclusion in this OIG report is that there was miscommunication, confusion, and yes, there were errors by the city of Miami Beach. What were they? You got an application that had a bunch of crossouts on it, and you didn't call anybody, just as you suggested, Mr. Aronson.
Mr. Hudson, can I ask a few more questions?
For more?
You've already made your presentation. I
Okay.
just have a few
Sure.
short questions. So, your understanding of the first sentence of section 118-394, second part, the "or" part, you're saying if a non-conforming use is changed to a conforming use, you're reading into that it needs to be intentionally changed by the owner. Is that what you're suggesting?
If that change was made without the owner's understanding of it, yes, because
Okay.
that's a waiver. And a waiver in Florida has
Okay.
to be knowing
The
intelligent.
question was,
Yes.
you read an intent portion of that. It's not whether the document.
No, the
It's
statute-
not what the document says. It's what the owner of the property intended. That's your position.
No, the statute says that. The statute that you read says involuntary, a voluntary and intentional, and then it sets forth the two definitions
Yeah,
of that.
there's an,
So-
okay, I don't
so
want to
that-
argue with
so
you what
yes,
it means.
the statute says exactly that.
I don't want to argue with you what it means.
Okay.
Okay. So, one document that you did not provide to us, which I think is actually critical to this whole thing, was there a contract with the permit doctor, between the owner and the permit doctor?
I wasn't involved then, I don't know.
I know you weren't involved with it, but you don't know whether there's a contract?
I don't.
Wouldn't that contract authorize the permit doctor to speak for the owner in connection with obtaining an appropriate BTR?
It's not necessarily the change of the permit doctor that's the problem here. It's
No,
the change that we don't know who did it, and it's the box that says there's no change of use.
Hold on.
That's the evidence before you.
I'm asking you, are you aware as to whether or not there was a contract with the permit doctor and whether or not the owner authorized the permit doctor to do the BTR application?
I don't know.
And as I further understand what you're saying, is that a year later, when, as part of the renewal process, it was just a payment request, there was no notice of what the status of the BTR was at the time?
It's my understanding, and that's what I heard Mr. Mooney say.
No, what I heard Mr. Mooney say was that it was a renewal of a non-transient apartment. That's what I thought he said.
He said there was no...
But your position is different, that it was not, that it was just a blanket renewal and no notice of the status that had been?
What he said was it was a renewal of the existing BTR, which I agree with, which all he had to do was pay the fee, and the OIG has found that that was a flawed and unintended certificate of use.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Okay, what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna go one by one. I think it's easier to do that if you have questions. And let me start with Ms. Malakoff. Ms. Malakoff, do you have any questions?
No, no questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Silvers? Okay. Mr. Assion?
A question to the chair. Mr. Moody, just for point of reference, can you explain the process of who touches these documents first and how it gets to finance before it gets uploaded?
My understanding is that when an application is submitted, it's submitted to the finance department, the customer service department, division of the finance department, who then uploads the application into the system. Once everything is uploaded, it is then dispersed to multiple disciplines for review: planning, building, fire, and then it goes through that review process. But the initial intake is at the finance department and uploaded by the finance department.
So clerk takes it, scans it, uploads it at that point, doesn't really go to any other department before that?
That's correct.
Got it. That's it. Other question to the applicant. What's the status with the property now? Is it not being leased out?
Closed.
It's closed. So why is it closed?
Because it doesn't have a CU and a BTR.
And for how long has it been closed?
Late February of this year.
And before that, it was being rented long-term?
I don't know.
Can you answer that?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, please come up. State your name, please.
You want to swear on?
Yeah, you want to swear in?
We swore.
Yeah, he was sworn in. So.
Since you've owned the property?
Yes.
How have you used the property?
Solely rented out on Airbnb. the entire time,
Until when?
until late February this year.
So you've been using it as an Airbnb until this situation happened?
Correct.
And then at that point, you didn't decide.
And there was a large gap during COVID because hotels weren't allowed to operate in the city. But
And then at that point, you didn't decide, let me do this, long-term?
no, because I purchased this property as a hotel. I have no intention of running it as an apartment building. That's why I bought it. I bought it with that use. And yeah.
And so you were operating it since day one with that use until this occurred?
Yes. I have the bank statements from Airbnb. I mean, I can show whatever evidence.
Okay. Mr. Nagler?
Yep, I got a few. A few things. One is I want to I want to say that I think I agree with Mr. What's your name?
Aronson?
Aronson, thank you. Sorry, that was names. Mr. Aronson. And I'm going to ask staff to correct us if we're both wrong, because we're saying think, but I think everyone on this board needs to know what we're doing. And I think what we are doing, as a matter of fact, is we are looking at Section 118-394B of the city code and applying it to the facts before us. Is that what we're doing today? Is that the proper approach for us to take?
That would be correct, yes.
Okay, that's our scope, that's our authority, and that's our direction as a board.
Yes, and the parties have framed that issue.
Okay.
I agree, but I also, it's not just B as in boy, because the subsequent sections also talk about the evidence that the city should look at.
Okay.
So, but
All right.
yes, you're in the right section.
All right, so I just want to make clear to the residents of the city, I'm a resident of the city, and the standard is not what the neighbors want. It's not what the neighbors like. And that's, in a way, too bad. It's unfortunate, because I completely get why the neighbors don't want or like this. I get that as a resident of the city. And I don't really get, other than money, perhaps, why someone would want to come in and be an unwelcome neighbor. I wouldn't want to move into an area or come in and have everyone not like me or not want me there. But that's not what we're doing today, and that's not our jurisdiction. There was also a comment about that we shouldn't be making an exception and that we should follow the rules. That was a comment by one of the neighbors, and I agree. We shouldn't be making exceptions. We should be following the rules, and the rule was just confirmed by staff. A neighbor said we should apply the codes as written. That's what I'm going to do. I agree. So I agree with Mr. Aronson that there is this comma or, and I picked up on that also, and I didn't actually realize the comma or when we had the first substantive meeting on this, and I was focused on the first part. And that comma or, that was the, you stole my, whatever the saying is. I don't know names or sayings, but. So as far as the first part, it's on the record. I may or may not have misheard, but I'm pretty certain Mr. Mooney stipulated here today on the record, he stipulated that the intent was transient use. I'm pretty sure I heard those words come out of his mouth. And regardless, I think the evidence is overwhelmingly clear, including today's new evidence where the appellant testified under oath that he's always used as an Airbnb. And not to rehash, but since that's new testimony, I asked Mr. Mooney at the first meeting, do you have any evidence of how this has been used? Did you ever go out there and look? He said, nope, he had nothing. So that is uncontroverted of how it's been used and on intent. There's been a lot of talk about malfeasance. There was a change, there were accusations, it was referred to the police. And I think part of what we're here on today, and I could be wrong on this, and it's not so important, but I think it's in a way to defend and clear the city's name, the various departments about was there something nefarious going on? It was referred to the police and who made this change. And I think we have a great planning department. I think we're lucky to be led by Mr. Mooney. I think we have really good people working here. And I think there's an issue, if this goes the other way, residents will be angry. But I think the city's name should be cleared here. There's no evidence of who made a change. And I don't think that's what this is about. I think we have good people doing good work. And there may have been some errors made along the way. And I think those errors matter a lot when you apply the facts to the code. But they're mistakes, perhaps, and those happen. Mr. Mooney also testified today that by the time it got to him, I guess the corrected or what we wanted to do, quote, it was not his decision. He did not have authority. So I think what he's saying there is, I'm not saying what he's saying he would have liked to do or would have wanted to do, but we're here today because he had to do what he did. He had to make the decision he made. He had no authority at that point in time. The authority is with us to apply the facts of what happened and how we got here today to determine whether this should essentially retroactively go back. Okay, so with all of that, with that spiel out of the way, I have a question or two. Mr. Mooney, first of all, it sounded like you wanted to address something I said.
Nope.
Okay, because you stood. Okay. When the prior owner closed out and before the new application was received, what was it at that point in time? And that sort of
The property was permitted in 2018 for a conversion from a residential apartment to a suite hotel. And it operated as a suite hotel in 2019. In November, I think it was November 27th of 2019, the previous owner abandoned that BTR and the resort tax account because they had sold the property. But prior to that, the previous owner was operating it as a suite hotel.
But what was it like the day after it was abandoned or closed out?
Well, the day
What is
after,
it then?
once the BTR and the CU was abandoned, it basically had no status. And so the new owner started the CU BTR process. And so technically under the code, it wasn't authorized to operate as anything until the new CU and the new BTR was issued.
So when it's in that phase where it has no designation, can it be used in any way?
It's technically not supposed to be used. The CU BTR for this property, the new CU BTR for this property was issued approximately 5 months later in May of 2020 for a non-transient residential apartment. At that point, moving forward, it was not authorized to be used as anything but non-transient apartment. It was
Right.
not authorized to be used for Airbnb or short-term rental.
Well, by the city, I mean, you'll agree that the state license actually did allow transient use.
Well, the city's license is what controls, and I think that's an important point.
Okay. By the way, there was a question earlier about whether counsel for the appellant knows the details of the contract for the permit doctor to act as their agent essentially in making changes. And I guess we could have brought up the appellant to answer if we really wanted the answer, but we sort of just stumped the attorney instead. But what I'll make clear on the record is that there's voluminous testimony on the record from the appellant himself that he did not authorize the permit doctor to make the change that was made, for whatever that's worth. All right, Mr. Mooney, one other question. And I think this is, for me, this is the crux of it, and I think this is exactly what Mr. Aronson was saying is the crux of it. And I really appreciate the back and forth about whether intentional and voluntary applies to the part after the or. I did not major in English, and I don't know. What I do know, what I do believe, is I guess it's a matter of construction, whether you read in intentional and voluntary into the part after the comma and the or. But if you don't, it's draconian. Because it would mean if it is changed in any way, for any reason, by neglect, by mistake, by error, by negligence, by intent, you're done. You're done. If it's done behind your back, if it's done in front of your face, you're done. That would be, if there's no motive or mens rea relating to how it's changed, then it's a strict liability. And I can't go there. I can't go there if my job's to read that. So to go full circle on that, Mr. Mooney, there's a portion, I believe I'm looking at the IG report, page 20, and it talks about how the change box wasn't checked, the change of use. And it says there were no documents requested or provided to support the change of use, yet the planning department approved a change of use. I wish the IG were here. I don't know why they used the word approved, but would you agree, Mr. Mooney, that if there's no request or documents for a change of use, you can't approve it if it doesn't exist? You would just do it. It just happens. Perhaps this should say the planning department changed the use as opposed to approving the change of use.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that, Mr. Nagler, and the reason is that the CUBTR application that was uploaded was for a new CUBTR because the previous one had been abandoned. And the CUBTR application was clearly for a non-transient residential apartment. That was submitted. That's what was submitted to planning. That's what the planning reviewer looked at, evaluated, and rightly concluded was a permitted use in that zoning district. Once that conclusion was reached, the CUBTR was approved by planning and then routed through the rest of the disciplines.
Okay, so looking at your written response, page 11 of 27, I believe it's page, it says it's the last paragraph under subsection 2 or section 2. It says, finally, whether the change of use box was checked or not had no impact on this CUBTR application. And then it says, in terms of zoning review. Why did you not stop at it had no change of impact and instead add the words in terms of zoning review? What's the significance of adding that additional language?
Because that's what the zoning reviewer was looking at the use, and the determination of use falls within the jurisdiction of the planning reviewer, and that's the critical component of this appeal, is the use. The use is what is at the crux of this discussion, and that use itself, the determination of that use is not made by the fire department or the building department or the finance department. That is what is regulated by the planning department. And once that application with the proposed use for residential apartments, non-transient, came into planning and it was approved by planning, that basically set forth in motion the remainder of the CUBTR moving forward as a residential apartment non-transient.
We don't agree with that.
Is there a box to check for change of use when there's in fact a use in place? And why is there a box to check change of use if you don't need to check the box to change the use?
Sometimes you may have a property owner that has one particular use and they want to change to a different use. So by way of example, if the previous owner had not sold the property and decided, I don't want to do Suite Hotel anymore, I want to rent these long-term, I'm going to convert this to residential apartment, they would submit a CUBTR application saying, I want to change my use from Suite Hotel to residential apartment.
But in this case, they had closed it out and there was this sort of abyss where it had no use at all. And is that why you don't have to change check the box. I'm trying to understand, is that why you don't have to check the box, change the use, in order to actually change the use? Because you were going from nothingness into something as opposed to changing?
In this particular instance, because the previous use had been, the previous BTR had been vacated, this was submitted, and this was treated as a new BTR, new CU. And the zoning reviewer was looking at this as a new application for a new use.
Right, in that case, you're not changing per se, it's new.
You're not changing the use.
We disagree with that, as I
Please.
said. And I'm just doing, I want to give you all the information
Just-
that you need to make your decision.
If you could get a little closer to the mic, just so I can hear you.
I'm
Sorry, thank you.
Yep. As I said in my opening, the use doesn't change because someone sells the property. The use goes with the property, not with the owner. Mr. Mooney suggested that the prior owner abandoned his use. No, he didn't. He just said, I'm leaving, and he canceled his BTR, and he canceled his CU, and it's because he's selling it. He didn't abandon anything, so the use didn't change. The zoning status didn't change. This gentleman came in, bought the property. For that very reason, because of that use, it was still available, thought he was getting that
I
use.
get it.
We don't have to go backwards
I get
about
it.
all that other
It's-
stuff.
Mr. Mooney, is that true?
Well, we don't agree with that analysis. From our standpoint, once you close out a CU BTR and close a resort tax account, the new owner has to open up a brand-new one to continue the use. Sometimes people will close out a CU BTR because they just don't want to rent out the property anymore, or they just don't want anybody in there because they have a future use for it. Whatever the reason is up to that property owner. But once they began, the current property owner began the new CU BTR process, they were obligated to see that through and obtain that new CU BTR, which ironically they did in May of the following year, May of 2020. It was just for a non-transient residential apartment.
So basically, Mr. Mooney, your position is, when you close it out, it goes into abyss, and there's nothing running with the property. And Mr. Appellant's attorney, sorry, names.
Hudson, Mr. Hudson?
Mr. Hudson, your position is that even though you closed out the CUBTU, it's still running with the property, even though it's been closed out.
That's the law of Florida. Now, that doesn't
What
mean.
law you said?
That doesn't mean he can operate. He still needs to get his own CU. He needs to open up his own accounts. But the use, the zoning use has not changed, does not change because someone leaves.
Mr. Mooney, is this a zoning, is this a zoning issue? Is this what he's?
This is a zoning issue. If they had filed a CU BTR application for a hotel and processed that as a suite hotel, we would have approved that at the time it was submitted, because from December of 2019 through August of 2020, a suite hotel was a permitted use. And so if they had in fact submitted a CU BTR for the same use, that would have been approved. The issue is that they didn't, and a new CU BTR was issued for a different use.
Mr. Mooney, do you agree that there were some mistakes, some mistakes along the way by the city in this application?
I did not see any mistakes from the planning and zoning review of this. That was done in accordance with standard procedure at that time. I did not go into great detail with regard to the OIG's analysis, so I can't say that I would agree with some of the conclusions that mistakes were made, but at the same time, I'm not going to refute those either.
Okay. All right. One other thing, page 21 says, the city relied, because you already told me how the city trumps the state license. But here on page 21, it says the city relied on the state license, and then and we agree that the state license agreed for transient apartment. So I just had, again, I wish the IG was here so I could understand what this means, but that seems to conflict on its face. Did you guys agree on rely on the license which allowed for transient use?
No, we relied on the application that was submitted for residential apartment non-transient. To the extent that a property owner wants to obtain a state license, they can do that, but that's not subject to our approval, nor would that supersede what the requirements in the zoning code are for the uses.
Thank you both.
Okay, any other questions of the board? Okay, I've got a few. Mr. Hudson, question, after your client closed on the sale of the property, did he engage someone to manage the property for him?
I don't know.
And feel free to come, if you want to come up, please.
I was self-managing the property because I was living next door at the time.
Okay,
used
because
to-
I saw in some of the email exchanges, you were possibly do a master lease and you were going to actually have the
No.
seller manage it. There's some emails in the
Oh,
package that we were given
before-
saying you were going to try and do a master lease and have them manage it for you.
Before the purchase, that was contemplated, but that never came to fruition.
Okay.
I used to live directly next door to the property at the
Okay,
Flamingo.
and do you live here full-time, year-round?
Right now, I'm moving between here, Chicago, Los Angeles, but I did, yes.
Okay, so you were down here the whole time, basically this was in question after you bought the property, you were in South Florida?
I was in South Florida until May 2020, and then I was in Chicago. So I was between Chicago and Miami for the remainder of 2020.
Mr. Mooney, if you can come up, thank you. You know, one thing I'm trying to get my hands around is certificate of use and it being renewed again for another year, because I know, you know, I have a business on Miami Beach, well, a bank on 41st Street. I get my certificate of use renewal in the mail. I look at it, I send it to my accounts payable to have it get paid, and then I actually post it up. Is there a requirement that a certificate of use has to be posted in a place of business in the city of Miami Beach?
I believe a BTR has to be posted or available upon inspection request, but I don't know what the specific requirements are in terms of that availability or the posting.
Okay, why not? Maybe we posted in our break room, but I know, you know, specifically the renewal came, and obviously I make sure it says banks, et cetera. So what I'm getting at, I'm not understanding how someone can get something mailed to them and not look at it before paying it, because it wouldn't have said suite hotels, it would have said apartments. That's what I'm just trying to get my hands around. But I just wanted to make sure it wasn't a requirement. That was my question. I have a couple things, and if you bear with me, Mr. Mooney, you can sit down, but Mr. Hudson, if you can stay up there, please, thank you. Bear with me for a minute. And these are emails that were given to us, you know, a package, I believe, by the appellant's attorney, and I studied the emails. And I think something that came up here was intent. What was the intent? And that's kind of a big thing, whether or not that plays a factor in it or not, but I was just kind of curious, what was the intent? And I know someone that testified said during the pandemic, you could not have Airbnbs because City of Miami Beach shut down, which is true.
All hotels.
All hotels, but doesn't mean you couldn't rent an apartment. So, and just bear with me because there's about 5 or 6 of these I'm gonna read, and I'm gonna give you the dates. This is Friday, May 29th, 2020. This is an email to the appellant from Jenny Charvera from Permit Doctor. I'm not going to read the whole email, I'm just highlighted certain areas. I would like to confirm if you'd still like to operate short-term rentals or keep it as full-time. Keep in mind, short-term rentals have not been allowed in the city since 2010. Same day, a little bit later.
What's the date on that?
That date was May 29th, 2020 at 11:26 a.m. Okay, May 26, 2020, 11:47, shortly after that, to Jenny, and then copied Damian Gallo from the appellant, we would like to operate as a short-term rental. So that's a confirmation. Again, short-term rentals were not allowed. Going forward, May 29th, Friday, 2:10, this is to the appellant from Damian Gallo. Can we schedule to take pictures of the kitchens? I will need a letter from you eventually confirming that you would like to apply for a short-term rental usage of the property for a finance department. Respond at 6:23 from the appellant to Damian Gallo, copying Jenny. Hi, Damian, we have pictures on file. Do you want me to email them to you? Also, do you have a form letter to confirm short-term rental application? If so, I can put my personal info on it. Bear with me, I've got a few more. Can we schedule to take pictures of the kitchen? I will need a letter from you eventually confirming you would like to apply for short-term rental usage of the property for a finance department. Almost done. Now I'm going forward to September 23rd, 2001 at 4:19. This is to Damian Gallo from the appellant, and he copies Jenny Soreva. Thanks, Damian, but is the type of BTR correct for our short-term rental use? Just wanted to double check. The next day, September 24th, 2021, to the appellant from Damian Gallo, copying Jenny Soraya. It's for apartment use. The short-term rental was never completed. We never received a reply from our follow-ups to you, and this was the beginning of the pandemic.
Can you read that last one again? I didn't hear
Sure.
the last one.
And by, you supplied this to us. So it's for apartment use. This is to the appellant from Damian Gallo, and his assistant Jenny's copied. It's for apartment use. The short-term rental was never completed. We never received a reply from our follow-ups to you, as this was the beginning of the pandemic. So we talk about intent a lot up here. I do not see any of these emails that you provided to us referencing anything about a suite hotel. So if you can explain why nothing is referenced in emails here, and if that was truly the appellant's intent, why did it not say suite hotel in all these emails?
Because the fundamental finding, there were 2 or 3 fundamental findings of the OIG report. Misunderstanding, miscommunication, one other M word, I don't remember, we can all look it up, right? And he said, essentially, he singled out my client, he singled out Permit Doctor, but if you read the rest of the report, you can also see that the city of Miami Beach also got confused on certain terms. And he specifically deals with that 2010 short-term rental, and he says in the report, had they actually put short-term rental on the form instead of apartment building, it would have been denied and would have given everybody an opportunity to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? We don't understand what we're doing. The problem is, it wasn't short-term rental that was put on the application, it was apartment building. And that's what was issued, and that was never his intent, ever. His intent was to do exactly what was happening when he bought it. That's what he's testified to. The city had those BTRs and CUs. They were attached, in fact, as an exhibit. It's in the OIG report. All of that stuff was attached. The change of use wasn't changed. So if you get your scales out again of justice, all of those things, everything that the OIG report says shows that there was miscommunication, misinformation, mistakes by the city, red flags that the city ignored, stuff in the city's file that they should have looked at, telephone calls that should have been made. 2010, had it been short-term rental, that would have sent up a flag that it would have been denied quickly instead of being issued inaccurately and renewed inaccurately. So the OIG actually deals with that question and says, it's too bad that that mistake wasn't made because we would have figured it out 4 years ago.
I understand. The OIG report is kind of an after the fact. You know, I was very surprised when I read through, and I spent quite a bit of time reviewing the documents that were provided by you, and I don't know if any of my other board members caught what I said, but the intent has been mentioned various times, and I understand what you're saying about the OIG report, but separate from that, I just can't understand why none of those emails reference a suite hotel. It's as the appellant's going through the process, he lets a renewal go through, which would have said apartments, and then he supplies emails to us going back and forth to the permit expediter, basically not even mentioning it. And I'm not trying to get into a debate or rebut you. This is the problem I'm having getting around the intent. If I would have seen suite hotel in any of those emails, I might banner on the other side to say maybe that was the intent, but these are emails from him and the permit doctor.
You're putting a burden on him that's not fair. My client. My client is not a zoning expert. He's not a lawyer. He bought something that he could use in a particular way. We're going to call it a suite hotel. And that was his intention to do exactly that. He hires an expert, allegedly an expert. That expert takes his application and admittedly changes it, and then loses all their records that would explain why. All right? Huge red flags there. Somebody else, we don't know who, apartment building. Nobody ever wanted to do an apartment. That was never even close to the intent, yet that's what the city issued. That's the city's mistake because, as the OIG points out, there were 5 or 6 or 8 different folks that had an opportunity to say, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. The change of use box isn't checked. The prior use is this. Why would they do this? Short-term rentals didn't exist since 2010. This report goes through all of that, went through all of those emails. They had all of that. And the conclusions are simple. Mr. Mooney said it again at the end in response to somebody's question about 7 minutes ago. I solely relied on that application. So if he's relied on a fundamentally flawed application, domino effect that caused every other problem after this, he never saw the application that says apartment building on it. Or the BTU, and then the BTU, the renewal. You got your renewal, you look at it, okay, stick it in the closet or stick it on the wall or do whatever. He's a layman. You can't hold that burden to him. The city had an opportunity to fix it multiple times. Finance had an opportunity to fix it. Fire department had an opportunity to fix it. Planning had an opportunity to fix it. Finance had an opportunity to fix it. None of them fixed it. So you can't hold my client to a defined term in an area that he's not an expert when he hires experts to do it and expects the city to do their job. There's no evidence that's contrary to his intent. That's all you have to decide today.
Thank
No
you.
evidence that overcomes the evidence. If you believe there is evidence, that evidence would have to overcome the other clear evidences, the 3 or 4 things that we've showed you, including his testimony. That evidence would have to overcome those 3 or 4 positive pieces of evidence that we pointed out to you, and the OIG points out to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hudson. Any other comments, last chance for the board?
Yeah, I have another comment.
Okay, let me go ahead, Mr. Asian, and then we'll take you, Mr. Nadler.
Mr. Moody, can you come up for a second? How could we prevent a situation? Is there any ideas that this is teaching us of how to prevent this in the future?
There is a new process that went into place subsequent to this particular application moving forward. We now have a completely separate CU process from a BTR process. So now when people make applications for a CU, the CU has to be issued for a very specific use. That CU is issued, and then a follow-up BTR is issued. As is the case with all CU applications, I believe the city is diligent. I don't believe that the city intentionally tried to approve a application that was not consistent with what a property owner wanted to do. But ultimately, when a property owner is seeking a use, the city relies on what they are putting in the application and what they want that use to be.
I understand. When you issue that CU now through that process, is there a summary that explains what use is being approved and what can and cannot be done, or something to that effect?
If the CU, if it is for a new CU, for a new use, we would require a floor plan, and based upon the use, we may require additional information. So for instance, if somebody is applying for a CU for an alcoholic beverage establishment, we're going to require things such as an occupational content by the fire marshal to determine whether or not it's NNIE. If somebody is proposing a certain type of retail use and they're an area of the city that regulates either formula uses or other types of what I would characterize as nuisance uses, then we would likely require an affidavit as well as more details on the floor plan to make sure.
But my question is, the actual approval, does it provide a summary saying you are now approved to do X, Y, and Z?
The summary of what is being applied for is in the application. The approval is basically an approval of what is being proposed.
Right. But I'm just saying in general, people are coming in here from out of town constantly, right? And they're buying up properties to do X, Y, and Z, and they're buying it with intent. And this particular person came in, bought a piece of property. It was being used for a short term. He bought it to continue that. He continued to use that as short term. He provided his application to do exactly what he thought he was going to be doing, relied on somebody else to do it. And he didn't get what he was specifically, thought he was going to be getting, because he never changed the use from at any point in time, right? So it's unfortunate. I mean, I'm thinking of, as well as right now in Nikki Beach, the Penrods, they didn't press the button on time, and that was it. And in this situation, they submitted the wrong paperwork to the city, and that's sort of like what's happening. My question is, for people that are coming in, or even residents or whatnot that are doing this, you know, how could we sort of prevent that from happening? Because as a business person, he's not necessarily looking at all the paperwork and saying, hey, listen, did the people I hired do this right? I'm sure that he should have. But
I mean, ultimately, the city cannot control what people want to do with their property and what type of use they want to have. The city is certainly there to provide guidance with regard to whether or not that particular use would be approved, or if it is allowed, under what circumstances, the documents that need to be submitted to substantiate the use that is being proposed. Both planning department staff as well as the other disciplines are certainly there to provide that guidance. But in terms of an applicant wanting to do a use, the city has to rely on what they put in an application to do that review. We can't.
I understand. I'm just saying, like a doctor, you prescribe a medicine, the medicine comes back, it comes with a piece of paper and it says, this is for this, 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 and this, and this. And I'm just saying, I'm sure that there could be an automated system that says, if you picked these 5 boxes, those 5 boxes mean X, and that it automatically prints out saying you are approved, and right below it, it gives you the prescription of how that medicine is supposed to be used, and said, this is what you applied for, this is what you did, and here's the information for it. And I'm just saying, maybe the city could do something so that when those are approved, it immediately prints out sort of like the do's and don'ts of whatever it is that you're confirming that, you know, somebody is approved for. Make sense?
Yep.
Can we look into that?
Sure. I mean, prospectively, we can certainly look at any type of enhancement like that.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Nadler?
All right, yeah, I'll be pretty brief compared to my prior discussion. First of all, to Mr. Asione's point, I got your name. It's on billboards around town, so. Yeah, I mean, as a city, I think we've voted to have an inspector general. I think we, as residents, chose for that. And I don't know what he or she's getting paid, but it's probably a living wage. And we're paying for that out of our taxes, I believe. And there are a lot of recommendations that are in there to improve the system. So as a taxpayer, I would say, hey, let's read that report carefully for the recommendations and see if any of them stick. Just a thought. I agree with Mr. Asione in that concept. Otherwise, I think I can stick to my promise to try to stick to the code, and I just need one clarification, and then I think I'm done. And I think I figured this out as we went. When the CUBTU was closed out by the prior owner, the transient use was conforming. Can someone tell me if that's correct? Can we get a stipulation on that?
Yes, when the previous property owner closed out their CU and BTR on November 27th of 2019, that use of Suite Hotel was a conforming use.
Okay, and then, sorry, Mr. Mooney, and then when the initial application was provided by the new owner, a transient type use, a Suite Hotel I think is the term, was also a conforming use, is that right?
Suite Hotel was a conforming use up until August of 2020. So when the current owner made their application in December of 2019, Suite Hotel was a conforming use.
And when that application, that first application was signed, sealed, and delivered, at that moment in time, was Suite Hotel still a conforming use?
In December of 2019?
Whenever
Yes.
that was?
Yes. Yes.
All right, well, I'm just going to throw this out there. That makes it easy for me, and sorry, everybody, for flip-flopping here. But the code says it has to go from non-conforming use to conforming use, and at all points in time when the change was made, it was a conforming use. So it went from conforming use to conforming use. So it just doesn't, we're putting a circle in a square or a square in a circle, if I'm getting this right. When it was closed, it was conforming by the prior owner. When the new application went in, the transient use was conforming. When it was signed, sealed, and delivered, whether it was a mistake, an error, intentional, whatever, it went from conforming to conforming. There was no change from non-conforming to conforming. I don't think it fits. So
Well, no.
I think I'm good.
Let me.
Tell me why I'm wrong.
Okay. the issue became an issue in, I believe it was 21, when there was a new requirement on CUs and BTRs, and he had to file one on each of the 8 units. And he filed that. When he filed that one, that's the one that was denied. When he filed that one, it was a non-conforming use at that point in time, and it's that point in time, because he was allegedly legal, although he didn't intend for the use that was on the piece of paper. He was operating and they didn't shut him down, right? So when he does the right thing in 2021 and files the new applications, that's when everybody goes, oh, we got a problem, but the statute had already changed. This is exactly like the liquor store case that I litigated against the city 5 years ago, and that's why I'm standing here, that I ultimately won, and the city paid $1 million to lose that case. The same thing happened. The conforming use, non-conforming use changed while the store was closed. We alleged that the city wrongfully closed him down at gunpoint. Another conversation for another day. And the court found that even though there was that intervening change, that we still had the right to establish that we were a legally established non-conforming use, is the proper phrase.
But the non-conforming use that came to light when in 21, that wasn't a non-conforming use that he wanted anyway.
It doesn't have to be a non-conforming use. I think that's where you're making a distinction that doesn't fit. I agree with you, it doesn't fit, but it doesn't fit for a different reason. What's happening, when the application that was denied, we're arguing shouldn't have been denied, because at the time that application was denied, it was a legally established non-conforming use, because the city allowed him to run it. They essentially waived. The city waived. They didn't close him down, even though the city issued the wrong license. When he went back to get the right license, the statute has changed. He's grandfathered in. That's a classic case of grandfathering.
I get it, but what you're looking for here is not the grandfathering in that he got, because he got grandfathered into something that wasn't what he wanted in the first place.
I don't agree with you. That's the whole point of legally established non-conforming uses, is that someone that had been using it legitimately can't be thrown out because of a change in the use. Grandfathering is the term that we all used to use in the old days. It's exactly what that's designed to do. And every fact situation is different. You can come up with millions of fact situations, and that's exactly what happened in the Beach Blitz case. And I won that case. The appellate courts agreed with us in that case.
Okay, you
Yeah,
good?
that's fine.
Okay, last chance. Everyone good? All right, at this point, I'll entertain any motions on the floor.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion, what's your motion, Mr. Aronson? You good, you're on.
Yes. I would move at this point to deny the appeal and affirm the determination of the planning director.
Okay, we've got a motion by Mr. Aronson. Do I hear a second? Second, okay, second by Mr. Acia. I'll give it to you, Ms. Malakoff, because you're not here. You couldn't respond this quick. Can we do a roll call, please?
Sure, I'll do a roll call. Again, the motion was to deny the appeal and uphold the decision of the planning director. Mr. Nagler?
I don't know what I'm supposed to say for which thing.
Be a yay, wouldn't
So if you affirm the motion, it's to deny the appeal and affirm the decision of the planning director. Yeah, affirmed.
Yes or no, I think. is what
Mr.
you're asking.
Silvers?
No, you can say affirm.
Okay.
Mr. Aronson?
Yes.
Mr. Estienne?
Yes.
Ms. Malakoff?
Yes.
Mr. Goldberg?
Yes.
With that, the appeal is denied and the director's decision has been affirmed by a vote of 6-0.
Okay. Okay, so our next meeting will be October 13th. Again, Mr. Aronson won't be here. Again, hopefully we'll have the new board member appointed at the commission meeting next week. So if that goes well, we'll have 6 out of 7 for anyone that has anything on there. With that being said, a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Please turn on your microphone.